It all starts on the continent of the 9 provinces, which is overflowing with spiritual energy, marking the golden age of cultivation. With Western mages and the monster race in the mix, the scene showcases a prosperous era of Eastern cultivators in this bustling alternate world. To manage this, the Great Zhou dynasty established a special immortal talent market to allow gifted individuals to be recruited by major sects and become cultivators. Over at one of the recruitment booths, with a sign that reads, "Welcome to Qifeng Valley," a recruiter promises full benefits, on-time pay, and guaranteed housing for anyone with a dual spiritual root at the 3rd stage of condensation, or who is a descendant of an orthodox sect. Holding a scroll, the recruiter claims that with such fearless talent, the person would definitely pass the heavenly tribulation within 10 years. After the praise, the man named Chen Su, with a divine, grade celestial artifact quality dual spiritual root at the 3rd stage of condensation, gets a real big head. However, the recruiter immediately stamps his paper as unqualified. Utterly outraged at being rejected despite being a dual root genius, the man questions what kind of background this Qifeng Valley has to act like a major sect, while another brown-haired guy thinks his realm must be too low and decides to come back in 3 years. With a sigh of disappointment, the first senior brother of Qifeng Valley sits in his chair, fanning himself, and complains that out of all those people, there wasn't a single qualified one, and that each generation is worse than the last. Until his gaze hardens, and he demands that someone give something back. Meanwhile, a running girl begs to be left alone, saying that the Great Zhou dynasty doesn't need scum like them. Looking back, Shi Lingling questions why she can't enter a sect with her aptitude, since besides the 7-sect alliance, the others don't restrict recruitment based on it, and she recalls seniors in cultivation history who successfully passed the tribulation with her aptitude. Finding the girl quite stubborn, one of the pursuers cracks a mocking smile. Grabbing the girl forcefully, the guy compliments her beauty and suggests showing her a good time while promising to help get her into the Tianji Pavilion. Even with people around commenting that the Tianji Pavilion is one of the 7 sects and that it's best to avoid trouble and not mess with them, the girl tells him to stay away. Just then, a sheet of paper flies like a blade and cuts the man's hand, making him scream in pain. Calmly, with his fan in hand, the first senior brother of Qifeng Valley approaches the girl through the crowd. Annoyed by the interference, the pursuer asks where this pretty boy came from and how he dares to attack someone from the Tianji Pavilion. Unfazed by the threat, the cultivator just calls them a bunch of blind fools. With a simple flick of his closed fan, he unleashes a powerful gust of wind that sends the harassers flying. Completely impressed, the onlookers comment that the senior actually made a move and that he must be a big shot from a hidden sect to dare to teach the Tianji Pavilion a lesson. Bowing respectfully, Shi Lingling thanks her benefactor for the help, while he says it was nothing. At that exact moment, he notices a magic word written on the girl's back and lets out a murmur of surprise. Shocked to see the mark for trash on her back, he blurts out that she really has a crippled spiritual root, and the girl shyly confirms it. Extremely excited, the senior takes her hands and invites her to come back to Qifeng Valley to be his junior sister, promising a 5-day study week with 2 days of rest and full benefits, leaving the crowd in shock to see a big shot wanting someone with a crippled root. Oozing confidence with a half smile, he thinks that a crippled root only means the teachers of the other sects are incompetent. In front of the entrance to the valley, he explains that the master is out networking and that they can skip the formal apprenticeship ritual for now. While observing Qifeng Valley, the girl notices that the other hidden sects the cultivators talked about look pretty run down, with the wall collapsing. With a drop of sweat on her face, she notes how worn out and simple the environment is. Quite excited, the first senior brother calls for the second junior brother, asking him to come out quickly and meet the new junior sister of Qifeng Valley. The girl's eyes immediately sparkle with pure anticipation to meet her new colleague. In her vision, the second senior is an incredibly handsome man holding a formidable sword amidst cherry blossoms blowing in the wind. However, reality shows the second senior brother, named Xu Xiaoqing, lazily eating a meat skewer. Totally disappointed by the shattered expectation, the girl grumbles that the difference between Instagram and reality is gigantic. Squatting on the ground with his dog, the second senior is told by the first brother to put the rabbit head aside for now and try to be nice to the newly recruited Shi Lingling. Ignoring the advice on good manners, Xiaoqing offers some of his food to the newbie, who instantly refuses it with disgust. Uncaring about the refusal, the guy turns his back and says he's going to get 2 more skewers, completely ignoring the first senior, who tells him to listen when people are talking. Confused by the whole situation, the newbie asks if that guy is really the strongest in the valley, since he doesn't have a single trace of spiritual energy and is clearly just a mortal. The first senior quickly covers her mouth, sweating bullets, and warns her that she can't say things like that, because it will cause a huge disaster. At that exact moment, an old man with a cane lands with a crash, shattering the ground, and demands to know which brat hit his grandson. As the sixth elder of the Tianji Pavilion, at the nascent soul stage, he furiously demands that everyone get out of there. Hiding behind his fan, the first senior regrets sending Xiaoqing to refine yin and yang pills, because he knew those scoundrels would come looking for revenge. To maintain his composure in front of the newbie, he forces a confident smile and tells her not to panic. Right behind the elder, the harasser points at the first senior, identifying him on the spot as the pretty boy who hit him earlier. Furious about the humiliation suffered by a disciple of his sect, the old man flies forward to teach the arrogant young man a lesson. Aggressively swinging his fly whisk, the elder launches a powerful flaming attack that causes a massive explosion in the courtyard. Puzzled to see that his attack didn't have the desired effect, the old man questions who is Sneak, attacking him, while the newbie is surprised to have not seen the first senior move a single inch. Amidst the dust from the explosion, the second senior brother appears untouched and asks if the old man was the one who kicked over the furnace. Looking closely at the young man's face, the elder is shocked to find that a mere mortal managed to injure him, and finds it completely impossible. With incredible speed and blurred movements, Xiaoqing suddenly appears right in front of the old man, intimidatingly asking if he's looking down on mortals. With his eyes wide with terror and sweat, the elder can hardly believe the absurdity of being threatened by a mortal. In a brutal upward motion, the young man lands a devastating punch right in the enemy's stomach, tearing through his defenses. From the overwhelming force of the unseen blow, a huge wave of golden energy explodes in the air as the old man feels the full impact go through his body and deform his face. Unable to keep his footing, the elder is violently thrown into the air while his grandson screams his name in despair, watching the scene unfold. Faced with that display of pure brute force, the first senior proudly reinforces that he had warned her he was the strongest in Kafeng Valley, and tells the astonished girl to never look down on him again. As the dust settles, the second senior brother, a physique with no spiritual root, firmly states that a mere nascent soul has no right to look down on him, and that even if the old man were at the tribulation stage, he would still beat him up all the same. Revealed to be a lucky transmigrator from birth, Xiaoqing had been brought back to Kaifeng Valley by his master to begin his dream cultivation journey as an overpowered MC. Smiling confidently while carrying bamboo on his back as a child, the young boy blindly believed that his day to become invincible had finally arrived. Reality, however, proved to be cruel, as he had no bloodline talent or cheat system, let alone a spiritual root, which prevented him from even moving a simple sword resting in a stone. Unable to cultivate his energy, he could only watch helplessly from the dirt ground as his fellow disciples joined the ranks of cultivators, flying on swords one by one, leaving him to play with the dog on the rock until one day even the animal itself left him. Weaving cheerfully at the little dog who had achieved the Tao and began its cultivation floating on a lotus, Xiaoqing accepted being a mortal and gave up on flying, but as compensation, he became incredibly strong physically. As an example of his unrivaled brute force, a cultivator at the void returning stage once drew his family heirloom sword in the courtyard to try to intimidate him, claiming he wasn't qualified to be his second senior brother. At the end of that little conflict, the sword forged with extraterrestrial meteor iron was easily shattered by Xiaoqing with a single finger flick while he calmly chewed his snack. Calmly continuing on his way with his bamboo pole on his back, he left all those blind fools who had insulted the sect and mortals lying on the ground after their beating, serving as a living warning not to look down on mortals. Back in the heat of the current battle, the elder struggles to get up, trembling with rage, and questions how a mere mortal can possess such immense strength, swearing he has never suffered such humiliation before. Focusing all his fury and remaining spiritual energy, the old man invokes a glowing seal spell, claiming he was just careless for a moment, letting a dirty sewer rat see an opening. A gigantic and threatening blue wolf head made of pure lightning forms around him, preparing the attack he calls the Heavenly Secret. Frightened by the Cyan Wolf Bite technique, which is the ultimate skill of the Tianji Pavilion, the newbie shouts for the second senior to be careful, while the first brother reassures her with his hands on her shoulders, saying there's no situation that guy hasn't seen before. Completely certain of his imminent victory with lightning shooting from his eyes, the elder shouts that he will open the boy's eyes today to the insurmountable gap between a nascent soul and his useless mortal flesh. With a deafening, ferocious roar, the gigantic blue wolf avatar bites mercilessly towards Xiaoqing, who braces himself, firmly wielding his piece of green bamboo. With a sudden push from his legs, the young man dashes forward at such an absurd speed that the ground cracks around his feet. Not intimidated in the slightest by the size of the glowing beast, he states that it looks more like a rabid dog that only knows how to bark and spins his crude weapon with both hands. In a single, devastating downward slash, the second senior splits the gigantic spiritual energy beast perfectly in half, creating a blinding flash through the air and cleaving the spell into two identical parts. From the colossal force generated by the cutting impact, the elder himself is hit head on and thrown backward into the air amidst the destruction of his ultimate lightning technique. With his eyes wide in pure, uncontrollable despair, the old man is completely shocked and unable to understand how that absurd outcome appeared before his very eyes. Hit squarely by the brutal blow with the piece of bamboo, the elder is sent flying, spitting blood with his eyes wide with pure pain. With his firm stance after the attack, Xiaoqing holds his crude weapon, revealing he used the final stance of the dog, beating staff technique. Seeing the old man collide violently with the wall, supported by his despairing grandson, the young man from the Tianji pavilion asks in terror how Immortal was able to break a cultivator's technique. Casually wiping the corner of his mouth, the second senior brother makes a disdainful sound, not caring much about the damage caused. In a fierce spinning motion with his bamboo, he sweeps the other disciples away, angrily stating that dogs are not allowed on these grounds. Completely mesmerized by that display of strength, Shi Lingling clasps her hands to her chest, wondering how Immortal can be so strong and wishing she could be like him. With the wind blowing through his hair, Xiaoqing casts a blank, expressionless gaze forward. Desperate at the girl's comment, the first senior covers the newbie's mouth, sweating bullets, while begging her to never mention the fact that he's immortal in front of him. Trying to appease the situation under the threatening gaze of the armed young man, the fan-wielding cultivator calls for calm, saying the girl just arrived and doesn't know any better. With his dark eyes fixed on them, the second senior maintains a heavy expression, creating a tense atmosphere. Handing a small bag of grain to the confused newbie, Xiaoqing simply orders her to go feed the pigeons, completely changing the subject. Relieved with a hand on his chest, the first senior brother confesses that the guy scared him to pieces, while the girl blinks, not understanding anything. Over his shoulder, with the wind blowing leaves around him, the second senior tells the newbie that mortals can also become incredibly strong, and warns her not to look down on them. Watching the young man's back as he calmly walks away, Shi Lingling promptly agrees with the instruction. Clutching the small bag of food, the girl mutters to herself that she wasn't looking down on mortals, but just wishing she could become as amazing as him. Calling the new junior sister to the Davacote, the first senior explains that unlike the rest of the cultivation world that uses talismans, Kaifeng Valley still uses carrier pigeons. Leaning in slightly to whisper in the girl's ear, he reveals that the reason for this is because the second senior brother can't use spiritual energy to activate communication talismans. Enraged by the gossip, Xiaoqing throws an object right at his colleague's head, shouting for Feng Qinji not to think he can't hear him talking trash behind his back. Even with the bleeding wound on his head, Feng Qinju coughs to cover it up and instructs the newbie to take any letter that arrives by pigeon directly to the second senior. With a dejected and comical expression, the injured cultivator grumbles that it's nothing, and that he's already used to these mere fatal wounds. Inside a dark room, a mysterious figure silently waits for someone to come through the door. Under blue clothes revealing robotic parts, the seated person says they've been waiting for him for a long time. As soon as he enters the room with a satisfied smile, Xiaoqing rubs his nose, announcing his arrival. With a sudden pull on his collar by a mechanical hand, he hears the woman say there's no time to waste, and that they must begin immediately. Through the thin, illuminated curtain projecting their silhouettes, the scene shows the woman leaning over the young man as he groans in pleasure, praising the wonderful sensation. Completely flushed and sweating with satisfaction, the second senior states that the position and speed are exactly to his liking, praising his partner for being the only one who truly understands him. Revealing her true appearance as a purple-haired cyborg, the fifth junior of Kaifeng Valley, named Luyaba, gives him a head massage, calmly replying that she can't cultivate either, which makes the young man complain about her stating the truth so bluntly. With her shiny metallic fingers working on the procedure, she comments that according to the analysis of his sample data, the result was conclusive. Completely relaxed under her touch, the young man listens as the cyborg explains that cultivation requires enduring lightning tribulations and bone-shattering reconstructions. Directly on the nodules of his head with mechanical precision, the woman's blue robotic joints work on the continuous therapeutic massage. Through her advanced gears, the cyborg concludes that trading hundreds of heavenly burns for a single chance at ascending to immortality is not worth it, according to her calculation program. Seductively over his body, she questions why he insists on looking for trouble when his current life is peaceful, while the black-haired young man replies that he wants to ascend to eat spicy rabbit heads for eternity. With his fists clenched in clear frustration, he grumbles irritably, asking why others can cultivate and he can't. At that exact moment, Shi Lingling throws the door wide open, excitedly holding a sealed envelope to announce that a letter has arrived for the second senior brother. Upon seeing the compromising scene of the cyborg leaning over the young man on the bed, the newbie's eyes go wide in pure shock. Completely red with embarrassment, covering her face with the letter itself, the girl stammers an apology for the interruption and says she'll leave immediately. After quickly processing the situation with her bionic eye glowing, the fifth junior sister asks the newbie to wait a minute. In the newcomer's frightened imagination, the cyborg takes the form of a tempting demon, praising her beautiful body and inviting her to cultivate with them, making the girl scream in terror, thinking she's seen a ghost. During the second senior's comical mental theater, he reflects on what to do upon encountering a wild, powerful cultivator with malicious intent in the wilderness while hiding behind a rock. Facing his old cultivator dog floating on a luminous lotus flower, the young man ironically concludes that as long as you believe in the light, everything will be easily resolved. Back in reality, the girl, trembling with fear, hugs herself, thinking she never expected the second senior brother to have that kind of bizarre tentacle monster fetish. In a desperate attempt with his hand outstretched to stop her from running, Xiaoqing tells her to stop right there and get her mind out of the gutter, because she's overthinking things. Under the serene light of the crescent moon shining in the night sky through the window, the chaotic mood in the room finally begins to calm down. Now with everyone's nerves settled, the dark-haired young man formally introduces the cyborg as 618, or Lu Yaba, a disciple of Kaifeng Valley and the newbie's fifth senior. Bringing a hand to his cheek with a confused look, the second senior notices a flaw in his own explanation and mutters that this doesn't sound quite right either. With a purely doubtful expression on her face, the newcomer confusingly questions the term senior brother he used. Walking calmly across the room with his hands on his hips, the young man says it doesn't matter whether you call her brother or sister, instructing the newbie to assume the cyborg practiced some special cultivation method that turned her into that, instead of thinking she's a monster. In her thoughts, reflecting on her 50 years of life in the Great Zhou dynasty without ever seeing anything like it, the girl wonders if this is a legendary secret art from the southern barbarian kingdom, to which Xiaoqing just lazily agrees. With a friendly approach, Lu Yaba offers the newbie the same therapeutic massage session she was giving the second senior, stating that it helps to clear the meridians and invigorate the muscles. Immediately after accepting the offer, Shi Lingling cries out in sheer bliss as she feels the metallic hands working on her tense shoulders. Totally relaxed and drooling with satisfaction, the brown-haired girl praises the wonderful skill the fifth senior cultivated, finding it all very innovative. Watching the bizarre scene from a distance with a drop of sweat on his face, the young man admits to himself that it really does look like a cultivation method, while the cyborg reminds him to read the letter. Unrolling the scroll he received, he's met with a text written in incomprehensible chicken scratch. Clearly annoyed with the sender, Xiaoqing grumbles, wondering why that sneaky weasel would send a letter when it's never good news. Faced with a wall of text that's just a long-winded, over-the-top greeting about the valley, the second senior boredly concludes that the author loves to pad the word count. Upon a closer reading of the content, the young man's green eyes show a sudden focus on the key information. Reading along with him, the newbie discovers that the letter's author found an ancient text with a method to reconstruct spiritual roots, but needs help with a ceremony, which makes her ask who sent it. Tossing the paper aside with total disdain, the young man predicts the lame excuse asking for help and warns that he'd be a fool to fall for that trick again. Joining the conversation, the cyborg reveals that it's from their sixth senior brother, named Shichuan, who works at the sixth agency of the Supervisory Council, leaving the newbie completely awestruck at how important Kaifeng Valley is. With a serious, warning look, Xiaoqing advises the girl to stay far away from this sixth senior, as getting involved with him only brings trouble, and suggests she focus on her cultivation, making the newbie excitedly ask him to guide her. Faced with the enthusiastic request, the black-haired young man points at the confused girl, questioning what he's supposed to start, to which she promptly replies about guiding her cultivation. With a gleam of pure admiration in her eyes, Shi Lingling argues that despite being mortal, he was able to easily defeat a nascent soul cultivator, and that he certainly possesses a special cultivation method. Shattering her expectations with a blank and simplistic expression, the second senior flatly denies the claim on the spot. Clinging to his arm forcefully in supplication, the girl begs to be taught how to get stronger, believing he can help her overcome her crippled root, while the young man tries to pull away, rudely telling her he has no method to teach. Through a blue holographic screen displaying his data, Lu Yaba defends the newbie, revealing that the second senior has an excellent track record of guiding others through breakthroughs, which makes Xiaoqing question what kind of nonsense she's spouting. As proof of her accurate records, the cyborg displays the image of the muscular third senior brother who advanced from Foundation Establishment to the Void Returning stage after receiving his guidance. Next, the simulation shows the hooded fourth senior brother who relied on the same valuable instructions to leap from Ki condensation directly to soul formation. Finally, the report proves that even the first senior brother with his fan was guided to the difficult tribulation stage, thanks to the second senior's efforts. Faced with the irrefutable track record of the ninth junior brother, who reached the peak of Foundation Establishment despite having the worst talent, the cyborg concludes her data analysis, leaving the newbie even more amazed by Xiaoqing's greatness. With her hands clasped in a desperate and cute plea, Shi Lingling begs once more to receive the necessary guidance to begin her journey in the mystical arts. After letting out a heavy sigh and looking away, the young man thinks sadly that if he guides her to ascension, he'll end up being the only lonely old man unable to cultivate in the entire sect, and decides to cook up a plan to trick her into giving up on cultivation. Suddenly striking a righteous pose with his arms crossed behind his back, he philosophically asks what the girl's true purpose is for wanting to cultivate immortality. Lowering her gaze with a melancholic and sad expression, she explains that because she has a crippled spiritual root, she has always been looked down upon and bullied since she was little by other people. Recalling the mocking smile of the scoundrel from the Tianji pavilion who harassed her earlier, the humiliation comes flooding back to her mind. Clenching her fists with a flame of fierce determination burning in her blue eyes, Shi Lingling declares loud and clear that this is exactly why she wants to get stronger, to prove to everyone that she is not weak. Faced with that answer, the black-haired young man seriously questions whether the girl wants to get stronger to prove her own worth, or just to get revenge on the people who bullied her. With her eyes shining with uncertainty, the newbie hesitates for a moment, trying to form an answer. Interrupting her on the spot, he aggressively states that if she can't see into her own heart, then having a supreme spiritual root is useless, because in the end, she is just a weak and incompetent piece of trash with no ability to fight back. Triggering traumatic memories, the girl's mental space fills with dark voices and faces mocking her crippled spiritual root. Overcome with anger, she tells him to shut up, shouting defiantly that she is not trash. Unleashing a strong aura of energy around her, she snaps, asking what's wrong with wanting to get revenge on them. Analyzing the situation, the cyborg reports that the girl's blood pressure and heart rate are rising rapidly, while the second senior calmly notes that her blood and Q circulation has accelerated, passing through 7 vital points, with only 3 still blocked. Charging furiously towards him, the newbie admits she's weak but indignantly asks how she's supposed to fight back in a cultivation world with a crippled root. Driven by anger, she throws a punch directly at her senior's body. Without the slightest effort, the young man dodges the attack with a quick sidestep. Taking advantage of the opening, he immediately retaliates, landing a sharp blow to the girl's stomach. From the violent impact, she is thrown backward, sliding across the floor, as the young man calmly states that now her ability to cultivate depends solely on her own luck. Worried about the outcome, the 5th senior warns that he used too much force and made the girl pass out, but the young man immediately denies it, assuring her that he had perfect control over the blow. Surprising everyone, the girl's eye suddenly opens, showing that she is still conscious. Lying on the floor, panting, she's shocked to realize her spiritual energy is skyrocketing. Feeling a warm current nourishing her internal organs, the girl is amazed to find her meridians have never been clearer. Unleashing a massive amount of aura, she groans as she feels this energy shattering the barriers in her body, layer by layer. Floating, enveloped in a brilliant light, the newbie successfully reaches the 5th stage of Q condensation, as applause echoes through the room. Very pleased with his own work, the 2nd senior claps, celebrating his new speed record for guiding people, while the cyborg, sweating bullets, realizes he totally overdid it, since he only meant to clear her meridians, not cause a full-on breakthrough. In a comical mental skit of a dramatic romance novel, the 5th senior acts like an overbearing CEO, holding the confused newbie's chin and warning that women who play with fire always get burned. Keeping up the over-the-top act, she hugs the girl, talking about grudges from past lives. Back in reality, the newly promoted cultivator excitedly jumps around her savior, laying out a wild revenge plot involving a clerk who knows her rival's secrets. Striking a pose of extreme righteousness, the young man agrees, saying the person in question must have had grand ambitions. Breaking the 4th wall with an excited shout, the girl reveals that the enemy demanded monthly passes in exchange, and asks everyone to listen to the rest of her revenge plan. But then it suddenly hits her, and she looks at her own hands, completely shocked, realizing she actually managed to level up without understanding how. Winking with a smile, the cyborg explains that during the massage, she ran a scan and discovered the girl's meridians were naturally blocked, causing her Q to stagnate. Pointing to her colleague, she reveals that the 2nd senior also noticed this and provoked her on purpose to force the accumulated energy out before stimulating her core with that punch to clear the pathways. Completely red with embarrassment, the newbie scratches her head and apologizes to the young man for thinking bad things about him. Casting a serious look over his shoulder, the young man warns that from now on, she needs to remember the main rule of Kaifeng Valley. With an intimidating posture, he decrees that they don't look for trouble, but if trouble comes looking for them, they pull it out by the roots, instructing the girl to hit back at anyone who tries to intimidate her until that person wouldn't dare cross her path in this life or the next. Saluting with great enthusiasm, the girl confirms that she understood the message perfectly. Changing his attitude on a dime, the young man waves his hand in annoyance, telling her to go play somewhere else. Running off happily, the newbie finds her senior's temperament very strange, since one minute he's super intense, and the next he's giving her the cold shoulder. Keeping her steps light, she skips away down the wooden hallway. Watching the girl leave, the cyborg comments that the second senior really is a hidden master, full of hope. The new recruit thinks that, if she gets just a little more guidance, she'll soon be able to break through to the foundation establishment stage. Dancing under the moonlight in the courtyard, she imagines that this run down valley might actually help her achieve her dream in the world of cultivation. Back inside the room, the fifth senior comments casually that it must be nice to see the junior sister advance so quickly. With a closed and frustrated expression, the young man ironically agrees, muttering that it must be great indeed. Suddenly, the young man breaks down into comical desperate tears, biting his own sleeve, furious that he made the newbie jump 5 levels with one punch while he still can't cultivate, as the cyborg hugs him from behind, suggesting mechanical ascension since the flesh is weak. Suddenly, a gigantic explosion destroys part of a building outside, sending smoke and debris everywhere. Startled by the tremor while feeding the pigeons, the girl drops everything, asking in a panic if it's an earthquake. Smoke rises from the building's destroyed roof as 2 small figures argue near the rubble. Pointing a finger angrily, the dark-haired boy blames his companion, shouting that he told him to put in only 3 portions of the ingredient, but the idiot put in 5 and caused the explosion, making it clear that their second martial uncle is going to beat them senseless. Maintaining a neutral and serene expression, the other white-haired boy simply refutes the accusation, saying it was his colleague's fault. Running to the scene of the accident, the girl asks in astonishment if they were refining pills or making gunpowder. Confused, the boy with dark ears asks who she is, while the white-haired boy calmly explains that she's the new martial aunt whom their master tricked into joining the sect the day before. Maintaining a gentle and radiant smile, the girl introduces herself amicably and confirms that they are the first senior brother's disciples, named Yin Lizzie and Yang Lizzie. With his head down, the dark-haired boy confirms that they were refining pills but failed miserably, and now they'll be goners if the second martial uncle finds out about the mess. Without losing his cool, the albino boy suggests that the newbie try refining, which makes his colleague freak out, yelling that they only have 1 set of materials left. Desperate about the possibility of another mistake, the dark-eared boy warns that if they fail again, they'll be 100% toast. Pointing directly at the girl, the albino states that this is exactly why she should do it, to activate the beginner's protection bonus. Understanding the genius of the strategy, the aggressive boy's eyes widen in amazement at the idea. Without wasting a second, the duo shoves all the ingredients into the newcomer's arms and quickly backs away, saying the job is all hers now. Analyzing the recipe on a piece of paper, the newbie kneels before the intact cauldron and decides she'll give it a try. Focused on the process, she positions her hands in front of the furnace and begins to channel her pink spiritual energy directly into the metal. Sweating bullets from fear, the 2 young apprentices hide behind a wooden cart to safely watch the result. An hour later, an intense golden flash erupts from the cauldron, amazing the dark-haired boy who claims he's never seen that light in refining before, confirming that it worked. Collapsed on the floor from sheer exhaustion, the newbie takes a deep breath, celebrating the surprising success, noting that alchemy is actually quite simple for her first attempt. Curious about the result, the somber boy uses a wooden tool to remove the supposed pill from inside the bronze container. Observing the newly crafted content, the 2 boys remain in absolute silence with expressions of pure disappointment. In tears, the dark-haired boy screams in despair that they're ruined, because the last batch of ingredients went to waste, since she produced "Eat That Thing." Drawn by the noise, the second senior walks over to the site with an authoritative posture, wanting to know if they blew up his alchemy room again. Without a second thought, the 2 apprentices point directly at the newbie, blaming the girl for the situation. Extending his hand, the dark-haired young man picks up the small, dark sphere that resulted from the refining. Analyzing the object up close, he stares at the girl, asking if she made it herself, which she shyly confirms. Hiding behind him, the apprentice mutters that if the martial uncle wants to punish someone, he should go after the newbie, while she shrinks back regretfully, justifying that she just wanted to help. However, upon sniffing the small pill, the second senior's eyes widen in shock as he realizes the result is actually a perfect celestial grade item, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Changing his tune, he gives a thumbs up with a smile, praising the girl's good karma, who is left confused about the connection. With a serene and philosophical look, the young man explains people think alchemy depends on experience and flame control, but in reality, depends purely on karma, just as advancing in cultivation requires a clear mind. Soon, a manic and terrifying smile spreads across his face as he notes that a mere beginner managed to refine something of that magnitude, concluding that she is a true gold mine for the sect. Coughing into his fist to hide his craziness, he regains his serious composure, handing her a new recipe to follow for the next batch. Using her hands, the newbie follows the new instructions, throwing powdered milk, sweet nectar, and fish mint into the dark cauldron. Utterly confused by the final result, the girl holds a cup full of liquid with little balls at the bottom, asking what on earth it is. Holding the cold drink with a straw, The young man takes a generous sip and lets out a satisfied compliment on the tasty bubble tea she prepared. Holding the cold drink with a sly grin and a dark aura, the second senior praises the girl for being an alchemy prodigy capable of making a modern product like bubble tea and decides it's time to train her properly. Utterly confused by the sudden change in attitude, the newbie just asks where the senior brother wants to take her as he excitedly pulls her by her clothes. With a wicked laugh and eyes glowing frighteningly, the young man invites her to help him refine a massive treasure, while the girl cries in deep panic at his demonic expression. Watching the scene from afar, the two little alchemy apprentices stay hidden, silently hoping the newbie can survive the training. In a theatrical setting, illuminated from behind the cauldron, the newcomer asks her colleagues what secret spice was added, because the mixture smells incredibly good. Hiding in the corner of the room, the senior calmly mutters that the ingredient isn't really a big secret. Above the hot container, colorful icons of likes, favorites, and monthly passes fall directly into the mixture. Due to his natural ability, Xiaoqing begins to frantically supervise the newbie's every pill creation, resulting in a shower of ultra-rare items pouring from the small cauldron as the girl works up a sweat. Acting like a true maniacal taskmaster, the young man cracks a whip, demanding the junior sister put more force into the refining because his ascension depends entirely on her, while the girl cries, fanning the fire with two fans next to a mountain of perfect pills. Completely traumatized, Shi Lingling hides, trembling in some bushes in the garden, mentally pleading not to be found. Pushing aside the foliage with a lunatic smile on his face, the young man discovers her hiding spot, telling the girl to hurry up and get back to pill cultivation with him, making the newbie scream in absolute terror. Exhausted from so much work, she finally gets to rest, soaking in a hot bath in a wooden tub, lamenting that she's dead tired. Suddenly appearing through the bathroom window, the senior yells at her not to be lazy because the ultra mega super Q condensation pill depends solely on her, while the girl sinks into the water, screaming that he's a pervert. Faced with her accumulated exhaustion, the newbie cries desperately, pulling on the senior's clothes and begging him to stop the training, while the young man, sprawled on the floor, squirms, saying he's not tired and demanding the super condensation pill to appear. With the passing of a month after this episode, the scene displays a blue and white pattern of detailed martial tiles. Observing a huge text box in the air complaining about how he excessively exploits others and wastes celestial treasures without any humanity, Xiaoqing raises his hand, indignant at the narration of his own story. Without wasting time, the second senior delivers a violent punch, shattering the floating screen while furiously yelling that the narrator shouldn't think he's immune to a beatdown. Far away, the gloved hand of a mysterious figure reaches for a glowing, floating letter, threatening the second senior for thinking he had no way to handle the situation. Caressing the pendant on his clothes, the long, purple-haired young man smugly states that his title of sixth brother didn't come from nowhere. Sitting comfortably in his wooden wheelchair, Shi Lai sighs, contemplating the landscape and predicting that the peaceful and tranquil days of Kaifeng Valley are about to end. Returning to Kaifeng Valley, a carrier pigeon flies through the skies of the sect's main area, delivering the correspondence on that quiet morning. Already accustomed to the daily chaos after overcoming the initial terrors, Xiaoqing's hands calmly hold a roasted meat skewer. Sitting next to Feng Qinjiu, the fan-wielding cultivator praises the newcomer's diligent cultivation, pointing out that despite the slowness, she is much stronger compared to when she had a completely crippled root, a fact the colleague in black clothes casually agrees with. Remembering an important detail, the first senior mentions that the pills she refined are excellent for focusing the mind and helping with stage breakthroughs. Distractedly asking if his companion has eaten any, cutting himself off mid-sentence. Sweating in absolute terror, Feng begs his companion to stop hitting him before he gets punched straight into celestial ascension, while Xiaoqing darkly realizes with anger that the pills are of no use to his mortal body or the newbie's crippled root. Suddenly breaking the tense atmosphere, Shi Lingling comes running happily to greet the two seniors, wishing them a good morning. Looking closely at what he's carrying, she curiously notices the letter with a red wax seal in his hands. Casually chewing his skewered meat, Xiaoqing holds the envelope, confirming that the mail came from the sixth senior, while the fan-wielding brother suggests burning it all immediately. With a smile on a finger on her cheek, the brown-haired girl finds the reaction strange and innocently informs them that the sixth senior brother sent that message specifically for her. Shocked by the information, the young dark-haired man immediately questions what kind of dirty trick that blasted sender must be hiding up his sleeve. Reading the paper's contents with confusion, Shi Lingling discovers that the sender is cordially inviting her to participate in the event at the Rai 4 Symbols Formation. Used by the Supervisory Council to suppress large entities of terror in a complex environment full of monsters, the gigantic blue formation glows, its energies kept active periodically by recruited cultivators. Explaining the situation to the newbie, Feng Qinjiu reveals that although he informed the brothers of her arrival, this array is too important, and he finds it strange why the 6th junior would want to involve her in it. Completely taken in by the text, the girl repeats what was written, heroically stating that the 6th brother considers her the hope for maintaining the sex reputation and teaching the freeloaders from outside a lesson, while the fan-wielding cultivator coughs up blood, perplexed by such a blatant lie. Against a solemn and dark background, the first senior introduces the 6th brother as the most notorious arrogant second-generation official in history, whose clan has ruled since the dynasty's founding. Tossing gold coins into the air, laughing like a lunatic among adoring people, she lay lives propped up by the deep foundations of his powerful family, second only to the local emperor, and rewards the crowds. Bored with a life of power, he buys the title of Vice Minister of the Council, just to spend his days sipping luxurious drinks and fooling around surrounded by sycophants at banquet tables. Surrounded by various exotic women on a plush sofa, the nobleman sighs, saying he misses his martial brothers and decides to visit them with some gifts. Taking the form of a sadistic smuggler in Feng's memory, the 6th brother would bring illegal items disguised as good things just to test them on his own sektmates. Fearing the description of that nightmare, the newbie trembles in fear, asking if the senior in question is really that terrifying in real life. Threateningly discarding the skewer stick, Xiaoqing changes the subject, asking in which direction this 6th brother's family estate was located. Charging forward with a bamboo pole in hand, furious and full of murderous intent, he is held back by the girl and his fan-wielding colleague, saying he's going to crush that scoundrel. With a huge red bump on his forehead, the cultivator cries, pleading for calm, because if they send the stressed-out guy as a gift to the Shi clan, they'll all end up at the wheelchair-bound senior's funeral. Regaining his calm with a long sigh under the torchlight, the beaten-up young man gives up on interfering and decides that next time, he'll let the troublemaker get a taste of that so-called mechanical ascension, asking for the letter back. Leaning her body forward, her eyes full of expectation, the new recruit asks if she now has the 2 seniors' permission to participate in the challenge. With a gentle smile, the first senior tries to beat around the bush, telling her not to be in such a hurry, but is abruptly cut off by Xiaoqing, who gives the girl the go-ahead. Questioning the attitude directly, Feng falls silent upon seeing his colleague pull out a thick, blue-covered book and hand it to the girl to study, saying he will supervise her forging a suitable sword for the journey. Radiating joy while holding the book with both hands, the newbie promises she won't disappoint them and will defend the glory of Kafeng Valley, while the senior tells her to go play, agreeing with her words. Hiding his face behind the white folds of his accessory, Feng Qinju sweetly praises Xiaoqing's consideration for the new members. Completely annoyed by his approach, the young man throws the tray full of food directly into the cultivator's face, telling him to shut up and talk less. Walking away with his arms crossed indifferently, Xiaoqing orders his colleague to write a letter to the 8th brother so they can find out what the ill-intentioned man in the wheelchair is plotting. Stopping abruptly in his tracks, watching birds fly in the clear blue sky, the dark-haired young man reflects on whether the 6th brother might have been telling the truth this time about finding a method for him to cultivate. On an idle interactive message board for the readers on Feng Qinyu's whiteboard, the cultivator warns everyone about the dangers of the highly poisonous and toxic plant shown in the work, urging caution. Disguised as a teacher tapping a blackboard with a pointer, the first senior displays details of the herbaceous plant belonging to the arum family, providing a public service announcement. Detailing through a greenish board, the text points out that the tuber has deeply lobed, dark green pedate leaves with a pale, cylindrical petiole. Highlighting the reddish flowers and fruits, the detailed description on the panel meticulously focuses on the cylindrical reproductive characteristics of the plant native to that region. Artificially spread across the hills, the species grows in clumps near elevations above sea level, appearing robust in the wild forest environment. Concluding the lesson by displaying the symptoms on his colleagues, who are suffering terribly in the warning illustration, the senior warns of the bitter and toxic taste capable of causing tingling, paralysis of the mucous membranes, nausea and difficulty breathing, advising to avoid consumption in any form. 5 days after the events began at the main, open-gated entrance under the valley's stone mountain range, the newbie bows excitedly, vowing to make everyone proud, while Feng smiles amicably at the prepared new apprentice. Holding a stretched white cloth with both hands, he displays a hidden object to the girl, warning that the second senior instructed her not to draw that powerful weapon lightly, fascinating her with the senior's consideration. Holding the wrapped box against her body, Shi Lingling looks over her shoulder, questioning if the second senior brother really wasn't coming to say goodbye to her. With a friendly smile, the fan-wielding cultivator waves, wishing her a safe journey, accompanied by the 5th junior sister, as he asks the newbie to come home soon. Through her glowing holographic data interface, the cyborg reports that according to her precise calculations, the situation is a bit complicated. To complete his colleague's thought, Feng Qinju states that due to the newbie's current proficiency, the probability of her getting first place is absolute 0. but the purple-haired woman tells him to relax, assuring him that she has a certain someone to cover her back. Far away at the huge gates of the great city, the movement of people and merchant carts continues bustling for the event. Right at the entrance, a large Sika deer rests on the ground with bandages all over its body, while the cultivators around let out heavy sighs of disappointment. Very frustrated with their mount's situation, the disciples of the moon-gazing pavilion complain that the ceremony hasn't even started and their monster beast has already been severely injured on the way. Not knowing what to do now, sweating bullets from extreme worry, one of them mutters that if the elder finds out they let the animal get beaten up like that, they will definitely be severely punished. Due to the unusual attraction in the middle of the street, passers-by point, completely shocked, at a young man riding a dog and wonder which sect he could be from, since the animal apparently can speak the human language. Still not believing their own eyes, the duo from the moon-gazing pavilion also notices the bizarre talking dog walking calmly. Annoyed at being used as a horse, Daekyong demands that Xiaoqing get off him, reminding him that he has iron bones and a tofu waist worthy of an immortal being, while the young man retorts that because he is a transcendent being, he is perfectly suited to serve as a mount. Faced with this golden opportunity, the two desperate disciples conclude that if the animal speaks the human language, its inner core must be incredibly valuable for them to use. With a snobbish expression of divine superiority, the dog thinks to itself that at least it knows how to fly, unlike a certain someone who can't even master basic sword flight. Furious with the pet's cheeky provocation, the second senior pulls his cheeks hard, asking what he's yapping about and if he thinks he's a big deal just because he can fly, as the dog cries in pain, begging him to stop pulling. To suddenly interrupt the comical fight between the two, one of the deer's cultivators approaches, complimenting the beautiful animal and asking if the brother would be willing to sell it. In an attempt at a quick negotiation, the duo introduces themselves as disciples of the moon-gazing pavilion, offering 20 spirit stones for the dog, arguing that it possesses considerable spiritual intelligence and wouldn't find a suitable fate following the young man. On the ground right behind them in the courtyard, the Sika deer continues to lie there, all injured and in urgent need of healing. With a completely unconcerned smirk at the offer, the second senior brother just lets out a scoff. As a direct warning to his owner, the dog advises him not to believe that arrogant nonsense, revealing that their mount was severely injured, and now they want to harvest his inner core to compensate for the loss. Casting a cold and threatening look over his shoulder, Xiaoqing questions what gives them the right to trade his dog's life to heal their mount, making it clear that the animal is his and is not for sale under any circumstances. With his hand outstretched, generating sparks of magical lightning, the cultivator warns threateningly that since the young man refuses a friendly offer, he will have to face the consequences. By the power of his glowing energy, the man invokes a circular lightning array on the ground, isolating the injured beast under the electric barrier. Without letting go of his pet's neck with complete calmness, the dark-haired young man intimidatingly asks if the opponent intends to take the dog by force or take him instead. In the blink of an eye, a thunderous flash hits Daekyong head on, filling the animal's body with violent electric currents crackling through the air. Amidst ladder of superiority, the aggressor states that dodging is useless because even Foundation establishment cultivators struggle to withstand that attack, guaranteeing that now their deer is safe and the elder won't punish them in any way. Casually dusting off his own clothes without a single scratch, the second senior grumbles impatiently that these magic attacks are very annoying. To solve the problem without much effort, the young man says he'll leave this matter in his pet's paws, and the dog lunges forward, barking that it's no problem at all. With a brutal and destructive impact on the stone ground, the animal shatters the surface, creating cracks that completely break the enemy's magic lightning circle. Propelled by a terrifying force in its hind legs, Daekyong leaps through the air, furiously charging at the cultivator who retreats in terror, not understanding what is happening. With his teeth bared and eyes glowing in a beam of fury, the dog lets out a roar, mocking the absolute look of astonishment on the opponent's face at the moment of impact. In a perfect spin through the air with extreme martial agility, the animal lands a devastating kick directly to the aggressor's face, using its special whirlwind technique. From the overwhelming force of the blow to the head, the man is thrown to the ground next to the deer, while his companion backs away, frightened, commenting that there is something very wrong with that animal for it to be able to perform elaborate techniques. In response to his partner's fall, the other disciple creates a water whip with his magic, vowing to capture the master first, because crushing a mere mortal without a cultivation base will be as easy as stepping on an ant. Under the sinister light of the enemy's water magic, the main character, with a vacant and deadly gaze, murmurs icily, preparing his own counterattack. Full of rage next to his owner, Daekyong just warns the enemies that they are actively courting their own doom by insulting the young man. Suddenly, the pet is thrown far away after receiving a kick from its own owner, falling and crying out in despair about why the enemy had to provoke the MC's stress like that. in an absurd charge that leaves a trail of dust and overtakes the dog, shutting flies with his leg extended, planting the sole of his boot with brutal impact directly into the water cultivator's face. Back on the ground, landing with an imposing and serene posture, he questions if the guys are really looking down on mortals and offers to give them a prolonged taste of the pain that a purely physical attack brings to their fragile bodies. Sprawled face down with a huge red bump throbbing on his head after the kick he took, the animal whimpers in tears that he may not be human, but the main character is definitely the real wild dog in the relationship. At the registration area for the 4 symbols array, the 2 beaten cultivators walk, limping and leaning on each other, swearing on their lives that, if they find that scoundrel, they'll make him and his dog pay dearly. Noticing their miserable presence approaching, a man with a top-knot smiles, immediately recognizing them as the Taoist fellows from the moon-gazing pavilion. Belonging to the arrogant Bright Moon Village, the guys start to mock them, saying that with their torn and dirty clothes, they look like disaster refugees, bursting into general laughter as they point to the exact dog pog print stamped on one of their faces. Outraged by the unprovoked taunting from the other group, the injured cultivator curses loudly, questioning if being humiliated once in a day wasn't enough for his suffering, until he notices with surprise someone arriving right behind them. With her large box strapped to her back, walking innocently, she lingling stops in her tracks, observing from a distance that some kind of commotion or fight seems to have started over there. With a gigantic spiked mace in his hands, a very muscular bald man points his weapon and tells that bunch of loser beggars to get lost, in a highly aggressive tone. In a brutal and merciless move with his heavy weapon, the brute strikes the cultivators from the moon pavilion, sending them both flying through the air without any mercy, amidst their screams of pain. In the face of the others' misfortune, the fallen and injured aggressors call the guys pieces of trash for thinking they have what it takes to participate in the array, telling them to run back to their mummies' laps. Indignant at the complete cowardice of the situation before her eyes, the newbie runs towards them, shouting that the group is going too far with those unnecessary aggressions. Drawn by the defender's familiar voice, one of the members of Bright Moon Village turns his head, displaying a sarcastic smile as he perfectly recognizes the girl who just arrived. As they look the ponytailed young woman up and down, the sect members immediately identify the girl as the useless one who was kicked out of their village some time ago. Deeply affected by the painful insults she had just heard repeated, she lingling frowns, repeating the words useless trash, in a tone of silent, indignant revolt. In a small, playful imaginary theater in the reader's minds, the second senior walks through the flowery courtyard with Dikyang, cheerfully singing about having a big yellow dog that he never used to ride before, sitting comfortably on the animal's back as it runs down a dirt road. The comical scene shows that on a sudden whim, the young man decided to ride the beast to heroically slay demons outside. With a glowing lightning whip in his hands, laughing like a villain, he strikes the dog's back repeatedly, rhythmically stating that he was overflowing with pure pride in his own taming skills. For the tragic and inevitable end of the little song, the young man and the dog trip right over the fallen cultivators, rolling in a completely shameful way in the dirty mud of the street. Back to the harsh reality of the present with an expression of hatred and veins popping on his forehead, Xiaoqing squeezes the pet's face, demanding likes and monthly passes to save him from this sea of suffering, while the animal howls in pain, begging for mercy. With his finger pointed right in the girl's face, dripping with pure contempt, the arrogant cultivator confesses that he thought she would crawl into a forgotten ditch to die after being kicked out, complaining about the bad luck of running into her right there. With her hands firmly on her hips and her eyes burning with brave determination, the girl corrects the false information, shouting at the top of her lungs that, in the first place, she was never kicked out, but left the village of her own free will. Thoroughly amused and disbelieving of her response, the man retorts that if she were really capable, the village would have done everything not to lose her, justifying that the leaders were just being magnanimous in allowing her to resign, so as not to crush her fragile pride. Over his colleague's shoulder, laughing boisterously, the bald brute scoffs, assuming that they were the ones who were unlucky to run into a useless crybaby, pointing his finger in her face and warning that she looks about to start bawling again, as she clenches her fists tightly, feeling her patience has reached its end. Through a loud announcement echoing throughout the stone square, the official organizers inform that registration for the 4 symbols array ceremony will close soon, instructing participants to sign up. With a hand on her shoulder, showing gratitude, the injured cultivator thanks her for defending them from the insult but suggests that the newbie focus on what's important and forget about them since the ceremony is about to start, to which the girl coldly replies that she's picking this fight for herself. On the other side of the conversation, the aggressor ignores the injured and continues to mock the girl, stating that because she's an expelled piece of trash from no sect with a useless spiritual root, she doesn't even have the right to try to participate in a sacred event like this one. With her hands firmly on the straps of her precious box, Shi Lingling proudly declares that she belongs to the glorious Kafeng Valley, warning with her chin held high that she doesn't need a meddler like him worrying about her affairs. Offended to the extreme by the audacity of that response, the two bullies start calling her shameless, mockingly questioning where on earth this completely unknown Kaifeng Valley came from. Hiding in a bush, calmly enjoying a slice of watermelon, the second senior mutters to himself, annoyed to know that outsiders think that any backwater sect from who knows, whereas getting free passes to the supervisory council. About to leap from the leaves to jump on the offender's necks in anger, the dog is silenced and held back by its master, who squeezes its snout, telling it to be calm and wait to see how things unfold. As a classic sign of mockery, pointing their fingers and laughing, the enemy duo gleefully concludes that some backwater sect and a useless, rooted woman really are a perfect match, proving the saying about birds of a feather flocking together once and for all. For the first time after so many accumulated insults, Shi Lingling's gentle gaze completely darkens, replaced by a somber expression overflowing with pure murderous rage. Completely oblivious to the mortal danger he has summoned upon himself, the bald brute laughs loudly with his eyes closed, fully agreeing that Kaifeng Valley must be a huge dumpster to pick up a piece of trash like her. With frightening speed that blurs her own silhouette, the girl closes the distance and lands a colossal slap right across the loudmouth's face, sending the man flying and spinning through the air from the impact of the blow. Thrown with extreme and uncontrolled violence, the man plummets headfirst, crashing through a local food stall and scattering juicy peaches and startled chickens all over the market. Without losing her fierce momentum after the initial slap, she charges forward with her arm extended, delivering a devastating punch to the second bully, while yelling that he has humiliated her several times for no reason and now deserves a good thrashing as punishment. In an absurd display of flexibility, propelling her body through the air, the newbie lands a simultaneous aerial kick directly to the chin of both the bald man and his goon, shouting at the top of her lungs that they deserve an even bigger beating for daring to tarnish her sex name. Back on the stone ground with extreme lightness and a clean landing, the young woman assumes her martial stance, amidst the destroyed market filled with sprawled bodies. Completely frightened by the scene unfolding before them, the injured disciples of the Moon Pavilion are shocked by the slim woman's thunderous physical strength, noting with apprehension that the technique of those kicks seems strangely familiar. With a sharp pain throbbing in his own chest, bleeding from the mouth, the defeated bully tries to get up with difficulty, asking how a crippled and useless brat suddenly got so ridiculously strong, assuming he was caught completely off guard. Staring at her own fists with a glint of pure excitement sparkling in her blue eyes, the girl marvels that she subconsciously ended up replicating the second senior brother's same move, whispering praise for the young man as a true genius of hand-to-hand combat. Full of unshakable confidence with her chest puffed out and a wide, radiant smile on her face, she concludes that the senior was absolutely right all along about never stooping to bullying, stating with relief that the feeling of fighting back and shutting them up is very exhilarating. From behind the thick foliage, eating his fruit, the smiling little dog and his satisfied master jointly praise the excellent crushing job executed by the prodigy junior sister. Suddenly cutting short her moment of euphoria, the girl turns her head, startled, as she clearly hears the threatening voice of a leader approaching. Consumed by the uncontrollable red fury of being humiliated in front of everyone at the official registration, the injured cultivator leans on his bald partner's shoulders, spitting heavy curses and swearing with mortal hatred that the girl made the worst mistake of her life by hitting them. Without being shaken for a second by the destroyed enemy's shouts, she turns calmly to face the duo and asks in an acidic tone if they're still not satisfied and want another beating. Driven to the absolute limit of his little sanity by that cynical and provocative response, the short man loses his composure, summoning a colossal amount of fiery spiritual flames around his entire body, screaming that he will use his fire soul to toast her useless body. Facing the threatening and scorching wall of lethal flames, Shi Lingling maintains her serious face, narrowing her eyes, and fixing all her attention and concentration on the enemy's next move without retreating. Across the stone courtyard of the main complex, the massive heatwave spreads widespread terror at the exact moment the officials of the great houses finish counting the registered participants for the array gates. As they see the explosion of flame magic violently take over that area within a radius of several meters, the spectators scream in panic and stampede, desperately running for their lives and bumping into each other. With an unbreakable determination moving her tense muscles, holding the box on her back tightly, the newbie charges forward decisively, putting everything she has into a direct clash with the incandescent whirlwind. In a brave and almost suicidal leap directly into the swirling orange bonfires with her fists out in front, she completely tears through the dense, smoky curtain, ignoring the threats uttered by the desperate cultivator on the other side. Extremely surprised by the newcomer's impossible audacity in deliberately diving into the tragic, destructive soul fire without any defensive cultivation, the two aggressors watch, stunned with their mouths open. at the woman's unstoppable charge through the inferno of flames to strike them again. In the midst of the suffocating heat, the fire cultivator screams desperately for the girl to get out of the way and not block the path as she relentlessly advances. Propelled by courage, the newbie breaks through the huge wall of destructive flames, pushing the aggressors back with full force. From the direct and brutal impact of the charge, the man's face is hit with so much force that it makes him spit blood into the air. Totally defeated and sprawled on the ground, the two bullies from Bright Moon Village lie there while the spectators watch the scene, perplexed. Dusting off her hands, the girl adjusts the large box on her back and declares that registering for the event is much more important than wasting time with them. Elsewhere, a floating announcement advises that there's no need to queue up at the last minute, calling the supervisory department unreliable, as Xiaoqing, accompanied by the dog, praises the situation. With a thoughtful gesture, adjusting his gloves, the second senior brother deduces that although Bai Lai is unpredictable, he doesn't mess around with official business, and something must have forced him to speed things up. With his eyes fixed on the building ahead, the young man says he needs to find this Bai Lai to sort something out, telling the pet to follow and stay with the girl. Curious as to why his master isn't going along, Daekyung listens as the young man explains that he saw those vengeful guys from Bright Moon Village, and that they will certainly try to get revenge on the junior sister. Walking calmly away, the senior states that the girl has grown up and it's time to let her go on her own, while the dog sighs, resigned to having to play babysitter still. In a comical mental skit about being reincarnated into a book as the villain with only a rooster, the narrator questions how to ensure a life of wealth. As the first option, the scene suggests creating a tragic story with a sad soundtrack and living as a dramatic storyteller on the streets. In the second alternative, the idea is to use the egg-laying rooster to become a legendary chef, making the dog bark while dressed as a bird as Xiaoqing sweats in confusion. For the last crazy option, the skit shows the breaking of the fourth wall using monthly passes to break physical limits, with the girl running through the barrier. In the misty labyrinth forest, the scene displays the dense jungle as the official announcement declares the start of the point-based challenge. Due to the rule that will award the highest scorer, the girl walks cautiously through the dense and frightening fog of the labyrinth of huge roots and trees. Suddenly, a strange floating creature attacks the newbie from behind while the rule states that defeating these beasts grants the necessary points. In a quick response, the young woman fires a sphere of blue energy directly at the monster, knowing that stronger creatures yield much greater rewards. Quite proud of her first victory, the cultivator holds her luminous prize with a confident smile on her face. Upon checking the display on her golden tablet, she confirms with satisfaction that she has already accumulated 100 points right off the bat. Excited by her progress, Shi Lingling raises her hand, declaring that she needs to win first place to prove her worth and bring glory to Kaifeng Valley. Across the gray sky of the dark forest, a flock of birds flies away in fear, indicating suspicious movement in the surroundings. Carefreely on the path, the second senior is being watched from a distance by a monstrous being hidden behind a thick tree trunk. From the shadows, with a terrifying roar, the gigantic beast with sharp claws lunges forward to devour the dark-haired young man. Without wasting a second, Xiaoqing lands a direct, clean punch right in the creature's face, telling the beast to shut up. With the brutality of the impact, the immense monster is thrown far away, colliding violently with the trees in front of a startled cat. Behind a nearby tree, a participant falls into absolute despair, crying in terror as he witnesses the monstrous strength crushing the beast. Standing over the fainted cultivator on the ground with his eyes rolling, the senior grumbles that the guy passed out just from seeing that, and would have become monster food if he hadn't been passing by. Near the man, picking up the golden tablet, the young man concludes that this event is just a scam by there to trick idiots into providing free labor. Right after understanding the farce, the main character's gaze is drawn to something eye-catching happening nearby. During the inspection of a glowing yellow array on the ground, the young man notes that a smaller formation like that wouldn't exist on its own. There must be others around. A little further ahead, upon finding a second purple magic circle, he steps on the symbol, confirming his initial suspicions. From atop a rock, analyzing the patterns, the young man understands that these smaller arrays form the cores and integrate to create the four great gates of the formation. In the overhead view, the illustration shows that all these parts magically combine to generate the complete four symbols array in the end. Under the intimidating image of a demon king, the senior recalls that this type of complex spell is used to suppress gigantic horrors and ancient vicious beasts. Due to Bai Lai's sudden rush to organize everything, the cultivator wonders if there could be a serious problem with the central seal. To prevent a tragedy, the young man decides he needs to find the newbie as quickly as possible in the middle of the woods. Suddenly, he notices the cultivators from Bright Moon Village sneaking through the dark tree trunks. Still indignant about the beating he took, the short-haired man swears that as soon as he finds the girl, he he will make her pay 1,000 times over for humiliating him. To calm his partner, the bald brute reveals he heard a deacon talking about a central swamp full of great demonic energy and dangerous monsters lurking. With a wicked smile, agreeing with the plan, the leader flatters the big guy, saying that using the creatures to do the dirty work and finish her off is a brilliant strategy. Quickening their pace, the duo advances together, agreeing to lure the newbie straight into the deadly trap in the swamp. On the dirt ground, a small map with circles marks the elaborate plan of the aggressors in simple detail. Under the force of his boot, the second senior unceremoniously erases the lines in the dirt, pressing his soul into the ground. Confident in the girl's safety, he sighs, thinking that as long as the dog Daekyang is by her side, there's no reason for real concern. Back on the path, the senior decides that his top priority at the moment is to investigate a little more about how that giant array works. Hearing a strange rustling from the bushes, he turns his head sharply, demanding to know who is hiding there. From the shadows, with a knife in hand, a man with a crazed appearance laughs macabrely, muttering about sacrifices for a great ceremony. With red eyes and a disturbing smile, the man says he will offer their lives to the great sovereign as long as the entity's wishes are fulfilled. Confused, with a drop of sweat running down his face, the main character asks if the guy is feeling okay. Without answering the question, the man charges forward frantically, surrounded by a glowing aura, asking for blessings for the king's rebirth. Observing the abnormal aggression, the black-haired young man quickly realizes that the opponent is under the deep influence of some mind control spell. In an extreme use of his brute force, Xiaoqing lands a devastating punch right in the lunatic's face, naming his move the Prodigal Son's Return Punch. From the inertia of the destructive impact, the bewitched cultivator's body is thrown far away, bouncing off the forest trees. Facing the paralyzed enemy, the senior says he has sealed the man's meridians, wishing him a good, long night's rest. In his analysis of the unconscious guy's state, the main character concludes that this level of control doesn't seem like common magic, suspecting a possible direct demonic influence. Suddenly, a huge white pigeon lands, flapping its wings right next to the young wanderer. Identifying the carrier bird immediately, the cultivator notices the tied scroll and realizes it's the response sent by the eighth brother. Using both hands, the senior carefully untees the small wooden cylinder tied firmly to the chubby bird's leg. With anticipation and the paper open in his hands, he mutters that he will finally find out what the sixth brother's real scheme is. Focused on reading, the young man analyzes the message's content, maintaining a completely serious expression. Suddenly, his pupils dilate in pure shock and tension as he understands the terrible gravity of that revelation. With the paper crumpled tightly in his hand, he breaks into a desperate run through the forest, shouting that the whole situation is extremely bad. Amidst the urgent scene, a yellow magic talisman burns quickly, its sacred symbols disintegrating in the air. In a new mental theater, the narrative presents the girl as Xiao Mei, who worked late and was attacked by an unidentified creature, being chased through the jungle. Luckily, having a monthly pass, the skit shows her gaining power to obliterate the beast with ease in a fulminating blue flash. Meanwhile, in the imagination, the boy without a pass ends up tragically ambushed by the monster boss, suffering in the sharp claws of danger. For survival and the illusion, the player reloaded the save point, begging for donations to help the main character escape the worst. Back in the real world, the confident cultivator asserts that breaking into the top 5 will be easy after she defeats the dark monster before her, vowing to make her sect proud. In the midst of her absolute focus, the young woman's eyes widen in surprise as she perceives a sudden movement, marking the environment with danger. Leaping agilely backward, she narrowly escapes an explosive, cutting attack that destroys the stone ground where she was standing. Completely annoyed by the cowardly interference, the newbie turns her head, demanding to know who launched that sneak attack from the middle of the trees. With steps full of scorn, the two aggressors from Bright Moon Village mock her, saying she's still a dreaming piece of trash for struggling so much to kill a low-level demon. From her box, a dazzling, glowing sword of pure energy is drawn as she lingeringly refutes the insults, stating that she will use the weapon forged by her master to teach them an unforgettable lesson. Faced with the flash of the powerful, newly revealed divine weapon, the enemy leader panics completely, sweating bullets, unable to believe that a useless girl managed to get such a high-level piece of equipment. Pointing her new shining weapon towards the enemies, the girl tells them to taste the power of her sword, revealing that the divine item is actually a giant crystallized hawthorn skewer. Faced with that bizarre sight, the two aggressors burst into laughter with tears in their eyes, wondering through their fits of laughter why it's a street food candy. With a finger pointed at the newbie, the short-haired leader scoffs, stating that this is exactly what's expected from trash items forged by a useless sect. Totally furious and surrounded by a pink aura, the bald brute leaps, delivering a crushing blow with his heavy weapon. Holding her sweet skewer firmly, the girl retorts the mockery, questioning what they're laughing at and guaranteeing that the unusual weapon is still more than enough to take them down. In a sudden advance, the bald man swings his enormous meteor hammer, warning that he'll make the girl taste the power of 10,000-year-old deep iron. Without retreating a single millimeter, Shi Lingling swings her crystallized skewer, announcing the first move of her Hawthorn sword art. With a devastating clash, the enemy's heavy weapon is perfectly split in half, leaving the big guy clutching his own head in despair, while his partner questions in shock what the heck that candy is made of to be able to break it. Fallen to the ground in tears over the loss of his weapon, the bald man cries while the arrogant cultivator tells him to forget the details and focus on following the plan. Desperate to flee through the swampy forest, the leader challenges the newbie to have the courage to chase them and try to kill them. From atop a rock, the dog Dikion calmly comments that the girl's temperament is quite similar to the second senior's, as she attacks decisively. As he stretches, the animal concludes that he won't need to interfere, while a gigantic purple monster with yellowish eyes silently emerges from the swamp waters just below. Through the dark forest, the frantic chase continues, without them noticing a massive creature swimming and breaking logs in the murky waters alongside the path. In an abrupt stop, the brute complains that the girl's weapon is too fierce for them to block, while the leader curses the situation, wondering where the great demons of the area are to deal with her. Still in the heat of the chase, the cultivator tells the duo to stop running, as sinister bubbles begin to rise in the water right near her feet. Her eyes widening in shock, the young woman is caught completely by surprise by the sound of something rapidly emerging from the water. With a sudden impact, a huge purple tongue grabs the cultivator's waist, violently dragging her back into the swamp in a large splash of water. Caught in the creature's grip, she struggles to try to break free as she is pulled to the water's edge. Before her, a terrifying silhouette of a larger demon at the Foundation establishment stage, with the appearance of a gigantic purple toad with tentacles, rises imposingly. In celebration of the ambush, the two enemies from Bright Moon Village laugh wickedly, decreeing that the girl's end has finally come. Suddenly, the gigantic monster swings its fleshy tongue, throwing the arrogant duo far away with a brutal impact. Supported on one knee, holding her crystallized weapon firmly, the newcomer mutters, annoyed with the situation. Without wasting time, the monstrosity extends its massive, suction-cupped paw, trying to grab the fallen girl. Facing imminent death, Shi Lingling freezes with her pupils constricted in pure terror. Cutting through the air in a flaming flash, a direct attack hits the creature head on in a fiery explosion. From the brutality of the surprise impact, the gigantic monster is thrown backward, raising a huge wall of water. Turning her head, the newbie is met with the sight of the small, flame-engulfed canine figure placing itself protectively right in front of her. With a fierce aura and eyes shining like fire, Dakiang aggressively asks how a mere toad dares to act so insolently in his presence. Back on its feet, the gigantic purple beast stares at the small, flaming animal on the swampy ground. Utterly terrified, the immense demon shrinks back, bleeding from the attack, and begs for forgiveness, asking what Lord Dakiang is doing in this place. Completely relieved, the girl kneels beside the pet, commenting that the second senior really was worried and sent him to protect her, confessing that she thought the young man didn't care. Hiding injured in the bushes, the two villains curse the fact that another monster appeared and is allied with her, concluding that they can't win alone and need to bring a bigger demon into play. Raising his hand, the short-haired leader tells his colleague to calm down and points in a specific direction. Observing the magic array in the background, he recognizes the spiritual circle used to suppress demons, noting that the overflowing energy is perfect to combat them. Full of ill intentions, he suggests that if they can borrow some of that spiritual power, they can exterminate the beasts, becoming the greatest hunters in the village, and eliminating the girl in the process. In total agreement with the brilliant plan, the bald brute channels blue energy, stating that it will be an honor for the newbie to become a sacrifice on their righteous path. Together, the two launch glowing talismans, chanting spells about the celestial light and the earthly brilliance of the moon. Like a projectile, the magic collides violently with the mystical protective barrier of the seal. From the clash of energies, a gigantic pillar of blue light tears through the forest clouds, marking the breaking of the formation. Far away, the intense vibration makes a teacup tremble uncontrollably on its saucer. Inside a luxurious hall, a kneeling servant hastily reports to his master that the massive disturbance is coming directly from the swamp area, suggesting that someone must have destroyed the central array. The subordinate offers to take some men there, but is stopped by his superior's outstretched arm, refusing the help. With a sly smile, the sixth senior brother, named Shilei, questions how the demons would be exterminated if the seal wasn't broken, assuring that everything is under his absolute control. To start another of the second senior's mental theaters, the narration tells the legend of an ancient warrior maiden who wielded a sweet skewer as a sword, charging monthly passes to keep the sacred weapon sealed. In the same comical skit, the small, flaming pet is revered as the divine beast Daekyang, who achieved success through cultivation. To peacefully seal the 1,000-year-old toad, the narration jokes that the warrior sacrificed her candy to protect the land, passing the legend down from generation to generation. Raising her shining weapon in the playful theater, the young woman asks the readers to donate the strength of the monthly pass to release the sword's true divine power. Abruptly returning to the swampy reality, the little dog is startled by a heavy and demonic spiritual energy at the exact instant a beam of light hits the two aggressors in the middle of the woods. Worried about the instability, the pet warns that the villains are causing serious trouble and tells the cultivator to stop them immediately. Consumed by a violent blue aura, the arrogant leader feels the infinite power of the spiritual seal flowing uncontrollably through his vines. Driven mad by the sudden possession, he turns to face the newbie with lethal intentions. In a quick move, the girl holds her skewer tightly, ordering the enemy to stop it at once. As an offensive move, she fires a strong blue blast at the aggressor, who defends the impact with extreme ease using only one hand. From the immense shockwave generated in the collision, the young woman and her dog are thrown violently far away through the air. In an uncontrolled spin, Daekyang hits the ground first, whimpering as the newcomer lands right on top of him. Crushed under the weight of his ally, the animal hears the cultivator murmur in surprise as she realizes the gravity of the situation. Completely taken over by demonic flames with glowing purple eyes, the leader tears off his own clothes in a wild frenzy. Not understanding his companion's madness, the bald brute grabs his arm, trying to call out to his senior brother. In an act of pure brutality, the possessed man grabs the big guy by the neck, sucking out all his life force as he screams in desperate pain. Fallen on the ground in a state of shock, Shi Lingling and the pet watch helplessly as the macabre sacrifice illuminates the darkness of the forest. With an insane and demonic glint, the cultivator's eyes reflect the total loss of his humanity. Exploding in a colossal torrent of black and purple flames, the villain terrifies the girl, who hugs the dog, screaming in fear, not understanding the absurd strength of that aura. Suddenly, glowing magic chains descend from the sky, striking the possessed man with crushing force and precision. Huddled on the ground, hugging the little dog, the cultivator observes the luminous magic falling, asking in amazement what kind of spell that is. In a restraining grip, the golden chains connect to the floating talismans, sealing his corrupted movements on the spot. Working as a team, the uniformed guards surround the suspect, pulling the restraints to capture him once and for all while informing their chief of the successful capture. Still impressed by the quick intervention, the newbie hears an imposing voice declare that this is an official matter of the 6th Agency. With extreme elegance and a smug smile, the 6th senior brother appears on the scene, telling all uninvolved parties to disperse. Recognizing the young man instantly, the girl whispers with the dog, confirming the senior's identity, while the animal mutters under its breath about why that traitorous bastard had to be there. From a distance, the nobleman dressed in purple instructs his subordinates to tie the prisoner securely, cruelly demanding they pierce the young man's collarbone as well. In a friendly approach, the newcomer casually greets the pet, while Daekyang turns his head away, complaining that nobody wanted to see him. With a respectful and formal bow, Shi Lingling finally greets her 6th senior brother in person. In a rather intimate way, the purple-haired man holds her chin, deducing that she is the student the 2nd senior took under his wing, since he sent his own dog as an escort, which makes the girl find it strange that he mentions the other young man so much. Through the illusion of a huge, furious wolf behind him, Shi Lei loudly demands that Xiaoqing stop hiding and show himself at once. Completely embarrassed and sweating, the newbie explains that the senior refused to come to the event in person, leaving the man in purple confused by the response, since the invitation was made specifically for the antisocial young man. Annoyed by the trap, Daekyang advises the 6th senior to give up or he will suffer Xiaoqing's revenge later, while the purple-haired nobleman sighs, playing with his pipe and doubting he will live to see that day. Suddenly, a loud rustling in the treetops catches their attention, cutting through the forest air. Leaping through the skies completely annoyed, the 2nd senior brother grumbles about not having arrived yet, and blames the blasted 6 for making him come to this hole, complaining about his inability to use flight spells. With a sweaty face and an expression of pure annoyance, the young man clenches his teeth, impatient with the long journey. Falling towards a gigantic demonic bird that sees him as dinner, he furiously yells for the creature to get out of his way, or he'll pluck its feathers to use as a sacrifice. Far away, Shi Lei calmly confesses that his original intention was to call the senior to supervise the array ceremony, because the creature sealed there is the demon king of the southern region. Utterly shocked by the absurd revelation, the canine pet's eyes widen in amazement at the monster's class. Maintaining his pose, the nobleman explains that the beast's strength is absurd and not even his entire agency could suppress it. So when he saw that his companion didn't answer the call, he had to take other measures. Leaning close to the newbie with a cynical smile, he reveals that he invited her only to use the provocation to force the 2nd senior to show up, making the girl realize with disappointment that she wasn't called for her talent. Without a shred of shame, Shilai raises his hands, admitting that in the end, he also became just a pawn in this little game, since the creature provoked him and the senior didn't show up. Confident in his actions, the man in purple argues that these are special circumstances and that it's good for the newbie to see the world, assuring her that he has a contingency plan in case the target of his scheme doesn't arrive. Tied by the chains, the possessed man roars, releasing purple energy, as the nobleman explains that the newly emerged demon king is weak and needs to suck the life force of a host to restore its original physical form. With the guards holding the restraints firmly on the ground, the 6 senior details that they just need to take this opportunity to trap the monster inside the vessel, making the creature's defeat an easy task. Through the golden magic formation shining on the ground, he reveals that he leaked the swamp's location on purpose, hoping that ill-intentioned people would come and serve as a vessel for the beast. Sporting an arrogant and dark smile, Shilai declares that he may not be able to defeat the Demon King itself, but he can certainly beat up a bunch of possessed weaklings. Impressed by the complexity of the plan, the newbie claps her hands, praising the senior's brilliance, while the dog curses him as a treacherous traitor. Walking elegantly, the nobleman instructs the girl to take notes, because what she's seeing is pure strategy. Suddenly, the ground trembles violently beneath their feet, making everyone look up in terror as rocks begin to fall. Tearing through the earth in an explosion of rubble, a gigantic monstrosity with sharp claws and a rocky carapace emerges from the depths. Sweating as he realizes the gravity of his mistake, the 6 senior's eyes widen, seeing that his perfect plan has just backfired spectacularly. With a deafening roar, the true Demon King breaks completely free, displaying its colossal size and vowing to kill them all. In a brief mental theater illustrating the pet's fear, the dog cowers, frightened by the dark and terrifying aura exhaled by Xiaocheng. Focusing on the main character's glowing eyes, the gag suggests that the young man is exhausted from working so hard like an idol, and needs donations of tickets to regain his vitality. Back in the chaos of the swamp, the magic restraints are broken, and the 6th senior's guards are violently thrown far away by a purple shockwave. Faced with his subordinates' failure against the power of the Demon King smashing the ground, Shilai complains about his men's uselessness. To protect the girl and the pet from the monster's massive energy attack, the nobleman raises a magic shield and deduces that the beast faked the possession just to buy time and restore its true body. Sustaining the magic barrier with a forced smile, he breaks the 4th wall, wondering if there's still time to get reinforcements from the readers to deal with the beast. Staring down at his prey from above with glowing red eyes, the monstrosity notices the presence of cultivators in the area, preparing a new massive attack with its hands. The creature says it will use their souls to nourish itself. Quickly pulling out a glowing magic talisman with a confident smile, Shilai refuses the offer, saying the monster is too ugly for his taste. Firing the spell directly from the talisman, a large, concentrated beam of ice crystals hits the beast's outstretched hand with impact. Laughing with total contempt at the enemy's magic, the colossal creature scoffs, stating that the pathetic attack was completely useless and caused no damage at all. With golden magic circles shining under his feet in a fusion spell, the nobleman turns to the newbie, calling her an idiot and asking if she thinks his attacks don't have a hidden second phase. Noticing the bright sparks appearing around it out of nowhere, the gigantic beast freezes, confused, not understanding what is happening. Sporting pure confidence with a smirk, the 6th senior brother just snaps his fingers to activate the set trap. As an immediate result, an absolutely colossal explosion of flame engulfs the entire Demon King, destroying everything around with extreme violence. As the smoke begins to clear, revealing a huge, destroyed crater, the guards return to the site while the girl and the pet watch the scene in awe. Utterly surprised by the destructive power she just witnessed, Shi Lingling asks if he won and praises the senior's real skills. In his thoughts, with a nervous smile on his face, the purple-haired man admits he's just a nascent soul cultivator, and that it's impossible for someone like him to solo a monster of such an absurdly high level. Changing his chick posture pathetically, he runs past the girl in a panic, yelling at her to stop daydreaming and run for her life. In a silent charge from behind the perplexed newbie, a gigantic, dark hand with sharp claws emerges from the dust. Unable to escape in time, Shilai is brutally captured by the gigantic fingers and lets out a cry of terror as he is crushed. Reaching out a hand in despair upon seeing the senior captured by the dark entity, the cultivator screams his name, begging the monster not to come any closer. Ignoring the plea, the entity moves its huge hand with terrifying speed, grabbing the girl and the dog in a single motion. Trapped firmly in the suffocating grip of the demon's closed fist, Shi Lingling and Daqiang are completely immobilized. Staring at the prisoners caught in its hands, the gigantic dark demon king with glowing red marks praises the nobleman's self-awareness in knowing his place. Swaying and unable to break free, the injured cultivator stammers, fearing that this is the monster's terrifying true form. Clenching his teeth in pure frustration at the imminent end, Shilei admits that he really overdid his calculations and lost control of the situation this time. Explaining its return, the beast reveals that its body was severely damaged when it was sealed thousands of years ago, and now it has taken advantage of the seal's destruction to discard its empty shell and assume a form based on the essence of its demonic soul. Tightening the lethal grip of its hands with a wicked smile, the creature demands that they hand over all their spiritual chew to nourish it. As the girl screams in pain under the crushing pressure, the sixth senior cries hysterically, wondering if his luxurious and arrogant life would really end in such a tragic way. Suddenly, Xilingling's eyes glow pink and she releases a gigantic explosion of spiritual energy around herself. From the colossal force of the generated glowing sphere, the demon's fingers are forced open, breaking the capture in an instant. With the continuous impact of the blue shockwave, the immense demonic entity is thrown violently backward, completely losing its balance. Now free and safe on the muddy ground, the nobleman and the coughing newbie catch their breath beside the exhausted pet. Still panting, the girl asks if it was the senior who blocked the attack, but Shilei throws the question back, completely shocked, wanting to know if that water sphere was the newcomer's hidden ability. Abruptly interrupting the conversation, the young woman points her finger in terror, telling the sixth senior to look ahead. Floating all around them in the forest, dozens of large spheres of purple energy completely surround the group. Recovered from the shock with a sadistic expression, the Demon King extends its hand threateningly, asking if they are ready for the bang. Closing its hand in a quick signal, the creature causes all the magic bubbles to shoot like destructive beams in the exact direction of the three fallen figures. In an act of pure defensive desperation, the newbie raises her crystallized skewer, gritting her teeth to try to block the enemy projectiles. At extremely high speed, the dozens of purple spheres close in, ready to mercilessly annihilate the group of cultivators. At the very last second, a massive explosion erupts right in front of them, destroying all of the monster's magic attacks. Surprised by the sudden barrier that nullified its fatal blow, the gigantic beast freezes, confused, trying to understand what caused the damage. Landing majestically in front of the group with a dark gust of wind, the great demonic bird appears as the girl joyfully celebrates the arrival of her second senior brother. In a completely indifferent manner, Xiaoqing holds the immense bird by one of its legs, using it as a weapon, and praising how practical the creature turned out to be. Consumed by fury at seeing his spell interrupted, the monster points its hand, firing a continuous purple beam, and shouting threats at the meddler who dares to seek his own doom. Swinging the giant bird up and down as if it were a simple club, the young man shatters the demon's magic energy, splitting it in half with pure brute force. With the absurd speed of his advance, he appears in the blink of an eye right in front of the beast's face, which widens its eyes with no time to react. With his fist clenched and overflowing with an oppressive physical force, the main character concentrates all the impact for the decisive blow with a serious look. In a direct hit right on the unsuspecting monster's chin, the Demon King is thrown backward without even understanding what kind of crushing force hit it. As a result of the devastating impact of the sharp punch, a colossal pillar of golden light explodes, tearing up the earth and shooting towards the heavens. Finishing the move with a firm and imposing landing, the second senior lands on the edge of the immense crater he just created, protecting his companions behind him. Observing the absolute destruction left by his attack that decimated the threat, he calmly comments that he would have been gentler if the opponent had been a rabbit. Raising two fingers with an unshakable posture, the young man coldly decrees that the enemy made two major fatal mistakes. Back on the scene with an imposing posture and a raised hand, the second senior decrees that the creature has no right to touch his junior sister and that the sixth brother can only be beaten up by him. In a small mental theater of the main character, the scene displays the preparation of the best ingredients, with the Demon King being cooked in a boiling pot while the dog salivates, and the nobleman watches in fear. As the first step of the imaginary recipe, the process calls for using boiling water to easily remove the beast's fur. For the second step, the playful instruction directs to lower the heat and let the meat cook slowly in a gigantic explosion of scalding flames. Failing miserably in the theatrical cooking, the dish results in a completely charred and wasted Demon King, as the young man asks the readers for monthly votes to try to recover the loss. Back to the harsh reality in the dark swamp, Xiaoqing walks calmly towards the nobleman fallen on the ground under the watchful eyes of the girl and the canine pet. Propped up on the ground with a satisfied smile on his bruised face, the sixth senior tells the newbie that he knew perfectly well that the senior was secretly following and protecting the girl. With his hand extended towards his purple-clothed companion, the main character directly demands the formula, while the other is confused, not understanding the sudden request. Touching the back of his own neck as he understands the embarrassing situation, Shilei confesses that he forgot the document because he left in such a hurry and discovers with frustration that the young man wasn't there to heroically save him. With a tense and very serious expression, The nobleman suggests they deal with the colossal threat first, promising to take his colleague to the supervisory department to get the items safely later. Turning his back on the group with total indifference and coldness, the dark-haired young man says he'll come back another time, while his companion panics, begging him to stay and think about the bigger picture of the chaotic situation. Suddenly, an immense explosion of purple energy shatters the stones of the place, brutally interrupting their conversation. Emanating pure fury in its restored colossal form, the Demon King roars, irritated by the boy's audacity in attacking it by surprise, promising to tear them all into bloody pieces. Terrified by the dark creature's murderous intent, the nobleman hides, cowering behind his colleagues, shouting for the second senior to solve the problem since he was the one who provoked the monster. Propelled by its heavy destructive aura, the gigantic beast launches a massive attack of purple claws, violently ordering everyone to die right there. In an act of pure defensive desperation against the deadly blow, the sixth brother throws a scroll towards Xiaoqing, revealing that it was the formula all along. Spinning his body nimbly through the air, the green-clothed young man grabs the paper with extreme precision without losing his balance. Analyzing the document's content with a focused and meticulous gaze, he quickly assesses the veracity of the information contained therein. Taking advantage of the cultivator's distraction with the reading, the monster dives swiftly from behind him, launching a brutal attack while declaring its own ambush advantage. In a light and perfectly calculated move at the very last millisecond, the main character dodges the creature's tearing blow, keeping the scroll safe in his hands. From the colossal and uncontrolled force of its own frustrated charge, the beast collides violently with the stone ground, raising a huge cloud of dust and destruction. Causing a sunken crater in the damp soil, the Demon King smashes its own face into the rubble, suffering the full impact of its shameful fall. Utterly frightened by the formidable resilience of the scene, the newbie shouts a warning that the monster withstood the previous punch, while the nobleman calmly states that this is just standard procedure in battles. Rising furiously enveloped in its dark and imposing aura, the entity notes that there is no spiritual energy in the young man's body, and mistakenly deduces that the human is hiding his true cultivation base as a precaution. Maintaining his unshakable and confident posture on the destroyed battlefield, the second senior awaits the next enemy move, exuding a light white aura of tranquility. Casting a sharp, sideways glance at the bestial creature, he grumbles with disdain, pointing out that the opponent talks way too much for someone who supposedly wants to fight. Convinced of its magical superiority and ancestral power, the monster invokes a gigantic, glowing purple circle under its feet, stating that this cultivator's body is the perfect sacrifice for its needs. Immediately caught by the enemy's sealing spell's magic restraints, the sixth senior complains with boredom about the lack of creativity in that attack, which blocks the target's energy flow. Displaying the glory of its thousand-year devouring array, the gigantic beast guarantees that the spell not only seals the enemy's spiritual energy, but also actively consumes it forever. Firing multiple tentacles of pure, lethal demonic energy towards the isolated main character, the king laughs macabrely, decreeing the imminent end of the human boy. Cutting through the dark skies of the gloomy swamp, a colossal lightning bolt illuminates the mountain range in the background, demonstrating the immense power of the magic over the environment. Observing the impending storm with a comical drop of sweat on its face, the canine pet focuses its innocent thoughts on taking the laundry off the line because of the rain. Protected by a resilient green magic barrier, the newbie anxiously asks if they shouldn't help the senior, while the nobleman explains that the beast is entirely focused on draining the young man. Laughing sadistically and absurdly victorious before the opponents, the Demon King celebrates, guaranteeing that all their power will serve as food to strengthen its own domain. Without showing the slightest effort or any sign of real concern, Xiaoqing grabs the lethal purple energy and easily shatters it in the air with his bare hands. Seized by an absolute and painful shock at the breach, the monster's bestial face contorts into an expression of terror as its spells are abruptly broken. By the inertia and force of its own violently broken magic's backlash, the gigantic entity is brutally dragged forward, completely losing its footing on the ground. Pulling the residual spiritual chain as if it were a mere rope, the main character prepares a devastating punch, ironically thanking the beast for shortening the combat distance on its own. His red eyes widening in deep despair, the creature realizes with fright that the young man possesses not a single drop of energy, and is, in fact, just a mere mortal. With a predatory and lethal focus shining in his narrow pupils, the young man fixes his target up close, overflowing with intense destructive intent. In an upward explosion of pure brute and kinetic force, he lands a colossal uppercut directly on the beast's chin, sending it flying upwards accompanied by a golden flash. From the crushing and perfect impact of the direct hit, the monstrosity is thrown violently into the heavens, tearing through the heavy clouds and the trees of the dark scenery. Still in the air, spitting thick blood from the open wound, the injured king shouts in disbelief, trying to understand how a useless human can possess such absurd physical strength. Deciding that escape is the best strategic option for its incredibly weakened state, the demon turns and flees, vowing to recover in a distant cave to collect this debt in the future. Hurriedly leaping away through the treetops in the night, the beast shouts final threats of revenge as the dark-haired young man watches it land on the destroyed ground. Not caring in the slightest about the cowardly escape of the colossal enemy, the main character walks calmly towards his faithful canine pet, sprawled in the grass. Noticing the steady approach and dark intent of his master, the dog panics completely, sweating and desperately pleading not to be used as a projectile again. Ignoring the animal's pathetic protests, the young man's strong boot hits the dog's rear with extreme precision and speed. Being launched into the night sky like a furry, high-speed missile, the secret throwing technique of Kafeng Valley comes into action, cutting swiftly through the air. With its face completely deformed by the G-force and tears streaming down, the poor dog cries in terror during the forced flight towards the enemy target. Colliding like a fulminating golden meteor directly on the Demon King's back, the pet hits the vital spot dead on, generating a flash of celestial impact. Feeling the excruciating pain tear through its massive body, the monster roars in agony as it realizes its true natal soul was completely shattered by the surprise blow. Unable to withstand the magnitude of the damage received in its core, the creature's colossal carapace begins to disintegrate in a painful explosion of fiery orange flames. Being swallowed by the inferno of fire generated by its own imminent destruction, the entity screams, cursing its cruel fate of being permanently eliminated by a simple, despicable mortal. Calmly eating an apple as the dog lands safely on top of his head, the young man proves the comical system legend where the most feared demon of the South was decimated by a mutt. Holding the valuable glowing core left from the enemy's remains, ready to crush it without mercy, the main character is abruptly interrupted by the sixth senior, who runs over, sweating, asking him to keep the item. Agitatedly pointing to the ancient formula in the serious young man's hands, the purple-robed nobleman explains, panting, that the flaming inner core is the invaluable main ingredient for the spiritual root reconstruction process. Reading the open scroll attentively with genuine interest, the second senior analyzes the detailed instructions that require the exact collection of QI and the molding of bones to form the spirit itself. Illustratively on the scroll, the first step indicates the careful mixing of the demonic core with the rare herbs of Ganoderma and dragon's claw flower to create the perfect condensation pill. For the second step of the detailed, mystical process, the instruction requires consuming the newly forged pill in a place of abundant energy until the body overflows to its limit, allowing for the brutal bone alteration. With energy flowing intensely in the playful illustration, the image shows the small practitioner's body glowing brightly as it absorbs all the QI from the dense environment around it. Next, to complement, the method introduces the vital need to practice the supreme bone transformation art of the sun's howl, so that the body can withstand the weight of the soul furnace. As a crucial and final part of the painful alchemical procedure, the practitioner must resist the extreme heat of being cooked alive in the great molding furnace, under the watchful eyes of their valley companions. Achieving absolute success in the final step of the sacred practical guide, the cultivator uses the divine ruler to seal the new spiritual root and finally conquer the long-dreamed-of ability to fly freely on flying swords. Back in the peaceful reality of the clearing, holding the valuable document, the main character agrees that the theory written there really makes sense, while the long-haired nobleman smiles, proud of his own efforts. Casting an analytical glance accompanied by a small smirk at his companion, the green-clothed young man seems to understand something very important hidden between the lines of that friendly attitude. With a friendly yet subtly intimidating posture, he reinforces his old promise that the arrogant nobleman is only allowed to be beaten to a pulp by his hands, causing a cold sweat of nervousness in his purple-clothed colleague. In a small, painful glimpse of the dark events just past, the girl and the dog agree that the sixth senior suffered a severe punishment at the hands of the entity, admitting that he brought that misery upon himself. Cutting from the chaotic forest scene to an elegant and gigantic nighttime estate illuminated by the glow of the full moon, luxurious calm returns to the group. Lounging comfortably on his luxurious sofa, being gently served by maids, the sixth brother gives a speech, reporting that all the masters and elders of the valley have already tried everything to create a route for the young man in the past, failing miserably. Sitting with his arms crossed in a dark wooden chair with his faithful dog by his side on the floor, the second senior stares at the mysterious box, suspiciously questioning if this new method is indeed reliable and legitimate. Savoring a fresh grape with an air of wealthy superiority, the nobleman guarantees that the scroll is authentic, as it was stolen with extreme effort directly from the top secret archives of the governmental supervisory agency. Still skeptical and suspicious of this sudden heroic goodwill, the dark-haired young man furrows his brow, curtly asking since when his snobbish colleague became such a charitable and kind soul. Making an exaggerated dramatic show with his arms wide open, The homeowner feigns offense at the suspicion, arguing that all the sect members just want to fulfill the young man's greatest and only dream of achieving immortality. Completely embarrassed by his smiling companion's fawning emotional speech, the main character covers his blushing face with his hand, telling him to shut up and immediately stop the terrible sentimental lecture. With the scroll open in his hands, the sixth brother states that he has already checked all the necessary materials and artifacts, as everything is properly recorded. Handing a pink list to the newbie, the nobleman says he will leave in a few days to help gather all the items. Completely outraged by the situation, the main character snaps, throwing objects into the air and asking how he can be sure he's not being used as a gunny pig for crazy experiments. Using the fan threateningly, the dark-haired young man dismisses the help, saying the sixth agency is already very busy and that he will look for the materials himself. In silence, the nobleman rests his hand on the wooden table, observing his colleague's reaction. Towards the exit, the second senior mutters thoughtfully that in the entire Great Zhou dynasty, only the Wanju Pavilion has the dragon's claw flowers. Worried about the young man's impulsiveness, the homeowner warns him not to pick a fight with the Seven Sect Alliance, as the pavilion possesses a forbidden artifact, too powerful to be provoked. Over his shoulder, the main character says he's too late, as he has already crossed their path before slamming the door shut. Sitting beside the table, the girl questions with disappointment if the boss lied again, while the nobleman rests his chin in his hand, sighing in relief for having managed to send his colleague away. With a relaxed posture, he explains that tensions in the Sect Alliance are escalating, and since the agency has no men to spare, he decided to use the second brother to stir things up. Suddenly, the green-clothed young man reappears at the window with a terrifying expression, making the nobleman and the girl break out in a cold sweat of pure terror. Claiming to have only come back to get something he forgot, the main character assures them he didn't hear anything, while the sixth senior raises his hands in despair, trying to explain himself. Overcome by nervousness, the man in purple confesses that the formula he gave is totally real, but he has no idea where to find the necessary materials. In a playful mental skit, he praises the junior sister's sweetness, imagining he should have recruited a cute girl instead of the scary guy, and promises to keep her secret safe. Back in reality, the newbie holds a huge and heavy wooden torture device, threatening the sixth senior if he doesn't fix his attitude. She might just let the secret slip one day. In total despair, crying hysterically, the nobleman grumbles that the girl has been completely corrupted by the second brother's bad influences, blaming his colleague for this hostile behavior. During the dark night, the scene shows the grand entrance gate to the flower fields of Wanju Pavilion. Through the tall grass, the newbie praises the route, stating that the shortcut taught by the sixth senior was very fast and precise. Tired and panting, the dog questions what they'll do if the owners refuse to hand over the item, to which the main character assures that the pavilion has a whole field, so taking just one flower will go unnoticed. With her hands clasped apprehensively, the girl points out that a place is important, as that must surely have many experts on guard. Pushing aside the foliage with a confident look, the young man quotes the art of war, stating that if soldiers come, they will block them, and if water comes, they will dam it. Through the thicket, the group comes across a sign stuck in a completely empty and destroyed field of dirt. With his eyes wide in absolute shock, the dark-haired young man freezes upon seeing the state of the place. Completely desperate and confused, he screams at the top of his lungs, wanting to know where his precious entire field of dragon's claw flowers went. In a small illustrative story from the past, the scene shows the main character as a baby, surrounded by countless spiritual treasures, considered a sign of climatic prosperity and wealth for the region. Inside a golden cauldron, the narrative tells that a wandering Taoist recognized the child's extraordinary nature and used every trick to make him his disciple. Back in the luxurious room, the sixth senior stirs his spoon, reporting that the young man's master got rich by selling those treasures and asks for donations of monthly passes to help the young mortal's journey. Now under the daylight, the immense and imposing buildings of Wanju Pavilion rise, surrounded by verdant mountains. Inside the main hall, a young man in black clothes remains bowed before an older man seated, who dictates the immutable family rules. Calmly drinking his tea, the master of the Song family warns his younger brother that he still needs to strictly follow the established rules. Outraged by the situation, the second son of the family, named Jufu, questions if people need to be rigid just because the sect's rules are. With the hot cup firm in his hands, the older brother retorts that as the head of the family, he needs to think about what is best for everyone. Suddenly, an object is thrown with extreme violence, shattering the main hall's entrance door. From the impact of the crash, the valuable porcelain shatters into dozens of pieces scattered across the floor. Furious with the sudden invasion, the head of the family demands to know who dares to enter, while crying and lamenting the loss of his 3 million spirit stone cup. Kicking open the rest of the door with the dog in his arms, the second senior enters, aggressively demanding they hand over the dragon's claw flower. Pointing a finger outside, the head of the house explains, stunned, that their father went mad and burned the entire flower field, turning everything into a pile of rubble. Shocked by the information, the main character repeats the words in disbelief, realizing that all the plants have indeed disappeared. In pure lament, the older brother reveals that only the ailing patriarch knows how to cultivate the plant, whining again about the loss of the broken cup. Consumed by the purest fury, the green-clothed young man grabs the leader by the collar, shaking him violently while the newbie tries to pull him back, asking for calm. Annoyed by the disrespect, the young Jofu intervenes, questioning who they think they are to invade the pavilion in such an aggressive manner. Pointing his finger authoritatively, he orders the guards to expel the intruders at once, surrounding the trio in the center of the hall. With a proud and confident posture, the main character introduces himself as the beloved disciple of their father's close friend and the interim leader of Kafeng Valley. In the face of the present shock, the young man indignantly questions if that's how the pavilion treats guests, specially sent to visit the sick patriarch. Due to the absurd story, the older brother mutters that he has no idea who this supposed close friend of his father is. To try to expose the lie, the leader asks what the master's name is, citing uncles Zhang and Lai as options. Caught completely by surprise, the main character hastily agrees, saying the master's surname is Li, justifying that because he is very discreet, it's perfectly normal for him not to be known. Reflecting on the answer, the head of the family recalls that Uncle Li really doesn't talk much and rarely mentions his own personal affairs. Offering a sincere apology for the initial rudeness, the older brother invites them to sit, as they are honored guests, while the second senior refuses, asking to see their father immediately to replant the flower. Worried about the clinical situation, the leader explains that the patriarch is gravely ill and in no condition to receive visitors, suggesting they inform the inner elders first. In a relieved whisper to her colleague, the newbie comments with impressment that the blatant lie actually worked out very easily. Through the courtyard corridors, the homeowner says that since the outburst where he burned the field, his father has been bedridden and almost always unconscious, but he still remembers the planting process. Noticing his younger brother slipping away, the leader narrows his eyes, accusing the young man of plotting something bad for sneaking around like that. Suddenly, a loud and scandalous noise echoes through the courtyard, drawing the entire group's attention. Fallen on the ground in despair, a servant begs for mercy, claiming she entered the place by pure accident and ended up breaking the ancestral rules unintentionally. With a sadistic and merciless look, the young Jufu orders the guards to drag the girl to the beast field and throw her in as food for the wolves. In the guard's arms, the girl screams in panic, begging for the young master of the pavilion's help to save her from that cruel fate. In a quick intervention, the older brother reprimands the attitude, reminding that Jufu himself was complaining about the strict rules moments ago, and that executing someone for it is an antiquated thing to do. Due to his radical position, the second son argues that the Celestial Tower strictly forbids the entry of anyone outside the bloodline, decreeing the immediate execution of violators. Intrigued by the conversation, the main character curiously asks what kind of important place this Celestial Tower is to justify such extreme punishments. Calmly, the older brother explains to the guest that the structure is a Feng Shui treasure spot belonging exclusively to the Song family. Rising imposingly towards the sky, the gigantic Oriental-style tower serves for the members to cultivate the power of the moonlight during the full moon, giving rise to the pavilion's name. Right after, the leader details that the energy there is incredibly pure and perfectly suited to their internal methods, reinforcing that on that very day, the young Jufu will perform his coming-of-age ceremony inside. Feeling very sorry for the situation, the newbie quietly comments to the second senior that the servant seems very pitiable and in need of help. As a peacemaker, the main character asks that in the name of their masters of friendship, they make an exception for the girl and not proceed with the mortal punishment. Upon arriving at the patriarch's room, the wooden door opens slowly, revealing the silent environment. Standing beside the bed, the older son gently informs his bedridden father that Uncle Li's disciple has come to visit, while the main character approaches, sweating with tension. Faced with the frail and pale appearance of the old man on the mattress, the dark-haired young man is shocked to find that the man seems to be on the verge of passing away. Deeply lamenting the patriarch's condition, the leader apologizes that he can't even preside over his son's ceremony, as the young visitor steps forward, determined to check the man's pulse himself. Holding the old man's thin wrist seriously, the second senior concentrates on reading the energy, while the newbie finds the scared expression forming on her colleague's face strange. To keep up appearances, the young man lies out loud, saying the old man will recover soon to drink with his master, but his face shows pure terror as he internally realizes the man is beyond saving. Without letting go of the patient's hand, he grimly asks the older brother to assess his own father's clinical condition and see the harsh reality with his own eyes. With sadness for the old man's weakened hands, the leader of the pavilion confesses that in the patriarch's current state, he won't be able to help with the dragon's claw flower at all. Under an extremely focused and calculating gaze, the main character silently analyzes the gravity of the problem he just found. In a quick change of attitude with a sheepish smile, the young man feigns, saying it's no problem and asks for them to stay for a few days, as if it were a short vacation. As a polite host, the older brother Wenyuan offers full hospitality, asking the guest to stay as long as he wants, while the main character promptly thanks him for the kindness. Through the sunny and peaceful courtyard of the estate, the green leaves sway gently in the wind. Walking beside the young man, the newbie curiously asks why they are still staying there since the dragon's claw flowers have completely disappeared. With his gaze fixed on the immense structure erected in the background, the second senior suggests the possibility of being hidden plants inside, since the tower supposedly gathers spiritual energy. Sporting a confident and mischievous smile, the young man decrees that very night, they will sneak furtively inside the celestial tower. In a playful narrative break presenting a side story, the girl says that in her past life, she trained in the Windfall Valley, mastering both medicine and poisons. Kneeling in tears on the floor, the young woman begs a prince for forgiveness for having unintentionally mixed toxic substances into his food, while rambling about being reincarnated into a male body, thinking that acting cold is what really matters. With a serious expression, the nobleman who looks a lot like the main character asks for the whereabouts of the former maid, while the girl wonders in confusion if this is her predestined romantic fate. Spitting blood and flower petals, the prince gets annoyed, comically complaining that his life has turned into a dramatic romance cliché and begs the system to switch worlds. Back in the nighttime reality, the view focuses on the base of the grand celestial tower, bathed in the light of the moon. Hiding in the bushes beside the dog, the girl grumbles that breaking into someone else's property isn't a nice thing to do, to which the young man defends himself, arguing that he is just doing a personal inspection of the facilities. Suddenly, the two are caught by surprise by a sudden voice stating that it has finally found them in the middle of the night. Coming out of the shadows and pointing a finger, one of the young men immediately recognizes the duo, while the main character is left wondering who they are. After the young man asks who the heck these guys are, the newbie remembers that they are the two participants from the Four Symbols array ceremony, and one of them realizes that she was the one who saved his little sister. Annoyed by the main character's complete disregard, the other cultivator assumes an aggressive combat stance, asking how that arrogant brat dares to forget them like that. Without wasting a single second, the second senior charges forward quickly, breaking the ground under his feet with extreme speed. From the direct and sharp impact, the aggressive cultivator is hit squarely in the face by a punch, being thrown brutally backward. Looking at the fallen enemy, the main character confirms that he had beaten him up before, justifying that he recognizes people by touch, while the guy mutters, agreeing with the painful logic. Kneeling to help his injured partner, the other young man tries to calm the situation by formally introducing himself and thanking the girl for saving their sister. With a look of pure boredom, the dark-haired young man sighs mentally, wondering if all the employees in that pavilion have names that sound like bad jokes. Giving credit where it's due, the main character says they should only thank the newbie, because he wouldn't have bothered to help if he hadn't been after the dragon's claw flower. Surprised by the information, the worker reveals that they are wasting their time because the old master burned the entire garden, and there's absolutely nothing left. By the informant's choice of words, the green-clothed young man narrows his eyes, quickly interrogating if there is anyone else looking for the missing plants. The man promptly confirms, revealing that right after the fire, another individual appeared, asking the same questions, and left in search of the southern barbarian. To detail the occurrence, he says that a dark, tattooed man from the southern region worked there recently and disappeared very suspiciously around the same time the patriarch fell gravely ill. Whispering close to her colleague, the newbie points out that people from the south are experts in poisonous arts and mind control, which would perfectly explain the old leader's sudden madness. In the midst of focused thoughts, the main character deduces that these mysterious invaders are probably after the valuable cultivation techniques stored inside the celestial tower. Suddenly, a loud and authoritative voice interrupts the conversation, incisively questioning what the whole group is gossiping about in the middle of the night. Approaching with his guards arrogantly, the second young master Zhufu catches the workers, who nervously try to explain themselves. Taking charge of the situation with a fake smile, the second senior pretends that it's all just a coincidence, asking the heir to teach them how to enter the tower since he knows the place well. Outraged by the audacity of the request, the nobleman aggressively asks if the foreigner has lost his mind, forgetting the strict rules they were warned about earlier. With a completely relaxed posture, the main character recites the rule that intruders are executed, but argues with irony that they already made an exception for someone else that same day. Upon hearing the blatant provocation, the young master shouts, calling the attitude pure insolence. Concentrating a strong, reddish spiritual energy in his hand, the nobleman warns that the older brother may treat them as guests of honor, but he will not be so merciful. In a furious advance, the hare unleashes a lit frontal attack, judging that the young man clearly has bad intentions for asking so much about the family's flower. Without showing the slightest effort, the second senior blocks the lethal blow, holding the opponent's glowing palm with his bare hand. By the firmness of the grip, the red magic energy is instantly dissipated into the air, leaving the aggressor completely vulnerable and surprised. His eyes widening in panic, the nobleman stares at his trapped fist, unable to understand how an attack like that was stopped so easily. Taking advantage of the perfect opening, the main character spins his body and throws the opponent violently through the air. With a dull thud on the stones, the young master collides with full force against the ground, left completely stunned. Watching the scene with their mouths agape, the workers whisper among themselves, frightened by the foreigner's courage in beating up the family's hair like that. With her cheeks flushed and her eyes shining with admiration, the newbie clasps her hands to her chest, finding her senior's attitude incredibly domineering. Casually dusting off his clothes, the young man announces that it's finally time to invade the tower, while the girl nervously warns him about the consequences of having knocked out a big shot from the pavilion. Logically and unconcernedly, the young man explains that the brothers probably don't get along, and that the family leader might even end up thanking him for the educational beatdown given to the younger one. Under the night sky and the intense glow of the crescent moon, the immense celestial tower rises silently, being the perfect setting for the duo's infiltration. Already in the structure's inner courtyard, the main character scolds the girl for using strange terms that make the mission sound like something improper, while she stares at him, not understanding anything. Hiding behind the wall next to the dog, the newbie whispers apprehensively, remembering that there's little time left for the here's ceremony to begin, and finds the total absence of guards in the place strange. Observing the long, empty wooden corridor, the second senior confirms that there is no one guarding that area either. Contemplating the bright moon in the sky, the little dog comments that the light awakens a primitive instinct to howl, while the cultivator just praises the beautiful night scenery. Focused on his goal, the dark-haired young man sits on the floor in a meditative posture, desperately trying to gather the spiritual energy of the environment. Sweating profusely from the useless effort, the young man continues to mutter his concentration chant, while the pet timidly suggests that he should take a break to rest. Suddenly, the newbie's eyes widen in confusion as she hears a suspicious noise coming from the nearby doors. Through the crack of the ajar wooden door, a dark and threatening silhouette observes the group in absolute silence. In pure terror, the girl points desperately, shouting to warn the senior that there is someone standing right behind him. In a lightning-fast attack, a gigantic blast of flaming spiritual energy is fired from inside the room, forcing the duo to retreat quickly to avoid the blow, protecting his colleague with his own body as he slides backward. The main character coldly notes that they are under direct attack. From the colossal force of the destructive magic, the attack misses its target and collides violently with the wooden structure, shattering everything. Amidst the dust raised by the impact, the young man clenches his teeth, assessing the damage caused to the scene. Coming out of the shadows with a decrepit and crazed appearance, the old patriarch of the family appears, drooling, as the girl immediately recognizes him. Seized by absolute terror at the old man's terrifying face, the newbie and the dog scream at the top of their lungs, hugging each other. With his senses sharpened, the main character grabs his companion by the arm, warning that more people are approaching the location. Led by the older brother with a lantern in hand, the four great elders of the pavilion arrive with heavy expressions and point directly at the invaders. Noticing the group's quick arrival, the second senior scoffs at their speed and mentally finds it strange that all the old men present have exactly identical faces. Seized by anger, the family leader accuses them of being shameless villains for repaying their hospitality by injuring the young heir and invading the sect's sacred site. With the patriarch's lifeless body fallen in the background, the man concludes that the duo invaded the tower to steal the secret manuals and brutally murdered his father in cold blood. Maintaining his characteristic calm, the green-clothed young man suggests they collect the old man's corpse before making accusations, pointing out that the man seems to have been gone for quite some time. Whispering from behind his back, the girl begs the senior to stop provoking the hosts, demanding that he explain the situation, as they have just been victims of a blatant frame-up. Completely ignoring any justification, the older brother orders the guards to arrest the insolent fanatics and throw them directly into the underground dungeons. Preparing her fists with an aggressive expression, the newbie suggests they simply fight everyone, using the young man's brute force to escape. Holding the girl firmly by the shoulders to restrain her, the main character asks for calm and warns that the situation is much more complex than it seems, forbidding any reckless actions at the moment. In a quick transition, the heavy prison cell door is closed and firmly locked. Sitting on the cold dungeon floor, the young man listens to his colleague complain about the humiliation suffered, deducing with rage that the younger brother must have killed his own father to frame them. Deepening her conspiracy theory, the young woman points out that the leader Wenwen is also very suspicious for having blamed them so quickly and conveniently. In contrast, the canine pet argues that since they found the body, it's normal for them to be suspected, but raises the important question that the red magic attack that destroyed the room couldn't have been done by the ailing patriarch. Turning their curious gazes towards the silent senior, the girl and the dog ask what his real opinion is on this whole bloody mystery. Taking a nap, leaning against the dog, the newbie thinks the second senior is very tired, while the pet retorts that he's just asking for a beating. Suddenly, a crash of breaking metal echoes through the room. Opening just one eye, the main character grumbles, noticing that someone is approaching the place. Opening the cell bars, the leader of the Song family tells the group to get out quickly, asking them not to let anyone see them. Rubbing his eyes, the dark-haired young man questions if the man is there to free them. With a serious expression, the older brother corrects the statement, warning that he is there to help them escape. Quite confused by the change in attitude, the girl reminds him that he was the one who locked them up moments ago, and ironically asks if the nobleman is a master in the art of changing faces. Maintaining his calm, the leader explains that they misunderstood everything, as he was cornered and had to fake it all. Trembling with rage, the man reveals he strongly suspects that his younger brother Zhufu murdered the patriarch but couldn't act rashly because he had no proof, and the suspect had a lot of prestige in the pavilion and the support of the great elders. Utterly skeptical, the second senior questions this supposed prestige, to which the leader explains that the dark tides of factions are constantly clashing behind the pavilion scenes. Elaborating on the matter, Wenyuan details that Zhufu always wanted to take the leadership that would have been passed to the firstborn, giving him a clear motive for the crime. While the newbie comments on how this seems like a classic throne usurpation cliché. Understanding the dangerous situation, the girl deduces that because the leader was walking on eggshells, he had to go with the flow and to frame them to avoid trouble with the younger brother before the time was right. Clasping his hands in a desperate plea, the firstborn begs the main character to help him defeat his brother and bring justice to his late father's spirit. Completely breaking the tense mood, the green, streaked young man simply goes back to sleep, snoring loudly, making the pet note that he has passed out for the second time. Coughing to hide his embarrassment, the nobleman tries to negotiate, promising to deliver the much sought-after dragon's claw flower that he hid in secret if the foreigner decides to cooperate. Grabbing the man's collar on the spot, the main character accepts the deal, demanding the plant immediately, as the leader is startled by the sudden approach. Suddenly, red magic slashes tear through the dungeon door violently. From the sound of the impact, the dark-haired young man casts a sharp glance over his shoulder, completely destroying the entrance. The young master Zhufu appears, knocking down the guards with a crash. Surrounded by his own subordinates, the younger son points his finger, accusing the older brother of colluding with the foreigners and vowing to eradicate the scum to avenge his father. Maintaining his tranquility with his hands on his hips, the second senior states that since everyone is gathered, they can finally begin. Utterly confused by the interruption, the invader questions what he is talking about. Cracking his knuckles, the main character encourages the firstborn to stop stalling and attack already, reminding him of the flower deal and stating that he is a true expert at beating up younger brothers. Narrowing his eyes mysteriously, the foreigner proposes that before the fight, they solve a little riddle. With a relaxed posture, he throws the question into the air, telling them to guess how many days the old master has actually been gone. In pure shock, the younger son claims that his father was perfectly fine that very morning, not understanding the accusation. In an illustrative deduction, the main character explains that someone used a spell to disguise a puppet as the patriarch, creating a smokescreen and masking the body's complete lack of life force. Clapping her hands as she remembers a detail, the newbie comments that earlier, the senior tried to hug the old man, but was quickly stopped by the firstborn. Putting the pieces together, the girl stares at the family leader with great suspicion. Waving his hands in despair, the nobleman argues that he just wanted to let his father rest and prevent the guest from catching any illness, swearing he is not the culprit. With his eyes narrowed, the second senior reveals that he also examined the old man's corpse in the pavilion and noticed something important. On the patriarch's lifeless wrists, the foreigner says he found deep cuts forming the silhouette of 3 stars. Pointing to his own arm, the young man explains about the toxic herb called Sivanaline stars, where 1 star appears each day after death, concluding that the man had already been gone for 3 days. Looking directly at the younger son, the foreigner mentions the rumors about the recent arrival of a southern barbarian and warns that if they investigate who brought this person, they will find the killer. Directing all the blame, the older brother points out that the employee responsible for bringing the barbarian is a direct subordinate of Zhufu, and that everything is recorded in the accounting books. Upholding the accusation, Wenyuan states that the killer disappeared as soon as the old man fell ill, deducing that the patriarch resisted the poison at first but was driven mad, burning the fields. Abruptly interrupting the line of reasoning, the main character turns with a changed expression. Consumed by fury as he connects the dots, the green-clothed young man grabs the leader, accusing him of being indirectly responsible for the loss of his much-desired flower and declaring that the fight is now personal. Pointing a trembling finger of hatred, the younger son accuses the firstborn of being a cruel monster capable of killing his own father for power. Hiding in the corner, enjoying snacks, the newbie and the dog excitedly watch the family drama, hoping the fight will kick off. Venting his grievances, Jufu reveals that the title of leader grants the pavilion's hidden legacy for ascension to the heavens, and accuses his brother of cowardly eliminating numerous rivals in the past to secure the position. Bathed in the prison's shadows, the young master laments that even he almost fell victim to his own blood's traps. Without lowering his finger, the younger son throws it in the firstborn's face that he only survived thanks to the elder's protection, and now condemns the cruel act of patricide. With a calm posture, the second senior asks the young man to choose his words more carefully, noting that it wouldn't make sense for the older son to lose patience and kill his father if the inheritance would naturally be his anyway. Lowering his gaze with regret, the long-haired nobleman agrees that this would be the logic but reveals that the patriarch noticed his malicious intentions and had been secretly preparing the younger son in recent years. Due to the bombshell revelation, the firstborn concludes that the position would never have been passed to him if everything had followed its natural course. Completely losing control and surrounded by a white aura, the leader shouts that the younger son has no right to inherit the pavilion, calling his father blind, admitting he would have killed him 100 times over if not for the elder's protection. Staring at his brother with great hatred, the young master retorts, stating that the murderer has finally confessed to his crimes. With a victorious smile and holding a scroll, Jufu deduces that the day's ceremony was the only chance to kill him and thanks the confusion for ruining the traitor's plans. Raising a finger in a sign of wisdom, the main character mocks the leader's stupidity, saying that brains are wonderful things when used correctly. Putting the final pieces together, the newbie concludes that the firstborn killed his father, made the puppet, and set them up to be the scapegoats because only during the ceremony would the younger son be isolated on the upper floor without guards. Slapping his own hand, the foreigner agrees with the logic, pointing out that by beating up the hair earlier and ruining the ceremony, he ended up saving the young man's life without meaning to. In a close-up, the firstborn's face darkens, revealing a somber smile. Unleashing strong spheres of blue energy from his hands, the villain confesses that since the act is up, he no longer needs to feign kindness. In an attack stance and with power flowing intensely, the murderer vows that none of them will leave that place alive. Charging forward completely impulsively with his fist engulfed in red flames, the younger son rushes in, cursing his brother as a coward. With a destructive thud, the young master hits the ground, breaking the stones after the firstborn easily dodges his furious attack. Arriving through the destroyed cell door, the guards and elders catch the fight but decide to wait and observe first instead of intervening. Being counter-attacked in the air, the younger son receives a brutal blow of blue energy right in the stomach and is thrown backward. Worried about the direction of the family combat, the newbie asks the senior if they shouldn't help, since the hair's skills seem insufficient to win the fight. Glancing sideways, the dark-haired young man asks if the girl has already forgotten the lessons he taught her. Beside her, the pet remembers that because the young master got beaten up badly earlier, he's already injured and has no chance of victory, while the main character agrees to beat up the firstborn too, to keep the family together. Suddenly, the second senior's expression changes, assuming an extremely fierce and focused look. Without mercy, Wenwen fires a massive blast of glowing blue energy, invoking his Moon Palm ability and telling his opponent to die. Refusing defeat, the younger son charges his hands with a red aura, vowing that he will not let the traitor escape unpunished. From the advance of both powers, the immense beams of energy collide in the middle of the prison, generating a huge shockwave. Maintaining the lead in the power struggle, the firstborn mocks the younger son's strength, calling him trash for thinking he could withstand the secret technique passed down by their father. Under the overwhelming pressure of the enemy's magic, the hair begins to be crushed as he bravely tries to resist the overwhelming energy. In total desperation, the newbie screams, thinking all is lost, and begs the senior once more to intervene in the combat. Suddenly, the young master's glowing red hand tears through the defenses of the power blast. Taking advantage of the unexpected opening, the younger son channels all his red aura, neutralizing the opponent's magic on equal terms. With unwavering determination in his eyes, he fires his own version of the Moon Palm, illuminating everything with his crimson power. From the colossal force generated in the counterattack, the red energy completely swallows the enemy's defense, hitting Wenyuan squarely with a devastating impact. being violently dragged backward by the force of his own absorbed blow. The villain tears up the cell floor, leaving a huge trail of destruction until he stops near the foreigners. Completely shocked by the outcome of the dispute, the elders at the door note that the younger son really did defeat the leader, noticing that the technique he executed seemed much purer. Enveloped in a red magical aura, the firstborn Wenyuan questions if his younger brother thought he was the only one who knew the moon palm, since their father taught it to him a long time ago. Assuming an aggressive posture with a wicked smile, the younger son admits that he never expected to see his older brother actually refine that technique to the level of the silver moon. Amidst the chaos, comically, the newbie hides behind our main character and the dog, whimpering that the situation is identical to her own level up, while complaining about her inability to hold back when hitting the villain. As Xiaoqing's guidance ability activates once again, admiring his own glowing hands, Wenyuan looks at the group, asking if the sudden breakthrough in his cultivation has any connection to their presence there. Calmly enjoying a snack, the green-clothed young man confirms that the Valley's technique may sound absurd, but it works, and ironically asks the leader to beat him up too, aiming to achieve immortal ascension directly with a punch. Pulling the senior by the collar, the girl shouts angrily, reminding him that he's not even immortal yet and is already pushing his luck, while demanding focus on the mission because the nobleman destroyed the flower field and they have scores to settle. Alerted by the foreigner's commotion, the family leader casts a sideways glance over his shoulder. Reflecting on his own strategy, the firstborn concludes that since he organized the ceremony alone, he could have moved his father's corpse to the pavilion without anyone noticing a thing. Continuing his reasoning, he thinks that he would just have to wait for the younger son to enter the place to bring a group of people at the perfect moment and find the body, perfectly framing him for the murder. With an expression of pure annoyance, the man deeply regrets that the sudden arrival of that noisy trio ended up ruining his entire perfect plan. Crossing his arms with a look of total disdain, the second senior asks if the nobleman really thinks he was a genius for figuring all that out on his own, since anyone used to palace dramas would easily guess such a cliché plot. Carrying the girl on its back, the dog turns its head, stating that if the master had already figured out the trap, it would have been better to run away, instead of getting involved in this mess, to which the main character justifies that carrying two dead weights makes escaping very difficult. Making a dramatic show with his hands on his chest, Wenyuan pretends to be moved, thinking that the foreigner was willing to risk his own life to become his scapegoat on purpose. Completely losing his patience in a comical scene, the young man tells the leader to stop flattering himself, explaining that he needed to invade the tower anyway, and that saving the nobleman's skin was just a mere bonus. Casting a dark and sharp look, the young man details that precisely because of this accidental rescue, the leader adjusted his plan, using the excuse of the prison escape and the precious flowers to bribe him into getting him out of there. Clenching his fist with indignation, Xiaoqing snaps, questioning if he looks like the kind of man who would betray his own moral values for a mere flower. With a relieved smile, the firstborn extends his hand, calling the foreigner brother, while the newbie watches the scene from a distance, feeling that something very wrong is about to happen. Without the slightest hesitation, the main character lands a devastating punch right in the leader's face, shouting at the top of his lungs that he is exactly that kind of corruptible man. Fallen on the ground with a bloody nose, Wenyuan asks in confusion if the young man suffers from motion sickness and receives a flat, negative answer on the spot. In a sudden and incredibly fast advance, the young man grabs the nobleman by the arm and breaks into an absurd sprint, telling everyone to flee that place as quickly as possible. Watching that bizarre scene with drops of sweat on their faces, the girl and the canine pet just agree that they already expected such a crazy move. Now in a secluded place near the rocks under the moonlight, the young man presses the leader against the wall, assuring that this distance is enough to shake off the pavilion's guards. Slapping the dazed man's face hard, the second senior tells him to wake up and demands to know the exact location of the promised dragon's claw flowers. Displaying a malicious and injured smile, the firstborn looks up as the foreigner grabs him by the collar, wanting to know what new conspiracy is underway. Furious with the stalling, Xiaoqing orders the nobleman to stop playing games and deliver the payment as agreed, since his life was saved. Leaning comfortably against the rock, Wenyuan questions with total cynicism if the young man really believed he would continue to cooperate after getting a beating. Fueled by hatred at the provocation, the main character kicks the stone with extreme violence, shattering the rock right next to the man's head, and accusing him of colluding with his younger brother. Pulling the traitor close with a murderous look, the foreigner intimidatingly asks if the guy is trying to call the shots. Completely terrified and trembling with fear, the leader stammers, confessing that he hid the plants and asks the young man to accompany him immediately. Observing the interaction from a distance, the newbie comments to the dog that the senior only went there to get the ingredients for his cultivation, and that solving that family's dramas was never his main objective. Now inside a lit room, the family leader asks the young man to wait a moment while he goes to get the desired items. Using both hands, Wenyuan lifts a rectangular dark and polished wooden box. Handing the object into the foreigner's hands, the nobleman explains that because the plants are very valuable, he had to hide them in a secret compartment, and encourages the young man to open it and check with his own eyes. Holding the mysterious container firmly with an extremely serious expression, Xiaoqing concludes that the long-awaited day of his cultivation has finally arrived. As he slightly lifts the lid of the wooden box, a dark and poisonous mist begins to leak through the small crack. In the blink of an eye, dozens of venomous snakes leap violently from inside the trap, straight towards the main character's face, who recoils in surprise. Completely surrounded by the reptiles scattered on the floor, the green-clothed young man remains motionless, enveloped in the dense purplish smoke. Mocking the situation with loud laughter, Wenyuan calls the guest a brainless idiot and confesses that he never had the flowers to begin with. Displaying a sadistic and smug look, the trader guarantees that the foreigner has been infected by the special miasma from the southern desert and will perish instantly as soon he tries to circulate his life force. Completely shattering the expectation of weakness, the second senior charges forward and lands a direct and brutal punch right in the lying leader's face. With his eyes shining with pure murderous intent, the dark-haired young man unleashes his fist, stating that the enemy is actively courting his own doom. From the colossal and upward force of a devastating uppercut, Wenyuan is thrown with extreme violence straight into the air, breaking through the structure's wooden roof. Plummeting back to the ground amidst the rubble, the nobleman spits blood and widens his eyes, unable to understand how the young man remains completely unaffected by the lethal poison. In a lighthearted skit, the dog explains that from being poisoned so much by the Six Brothers supplements, the main character has developed an absolute immunity, while the girl notes that the senior is genuinely furious this time. Emanating an oppressive and terrifying aura, Xiaoqing advances, stating that he only allows himself to be tricked by one person, and since he can't get rid of that person, the pavilion leader will serve perfectly to pay with his life. Frightened by the beating, Wenyuan crawls across the floor and shouts furiously, ordering his hidden henchmen to stop stalling and attack at once. Nimbly turning his body, the main character blocks the sudden charge of a gigantic purple snake using only his green bamboo pole. In a lethal and precise cutting motion, the dark-haired young man slices the massive serpent's head perfectly in half, spreading venom through the air. Observing the stone floor, the newbie notices with apprehension that countless smaller snakes have begun to slither towards her feet. Cornered by the reptiles, Shi Lingling asks where so many monsters came from out of nowhere, while the pet warns that those are not common beasts, but creatures strengthened by a dangerous spiritual array. Casting a cold look into the darkness, the second senior notes that the much-talked about southern barbarian has finally decided to show his face. Enveloped in the toxic smoke, the firstborn points his finger authoritatively and commands the assassin to eliminate all the foreigners immediately. Answering the command, several giant, glowing-eyed serpents emerge threateningly from the purplish mist. Taking a protective stance in front of the cultivator, the little dog bares its teeth as the circle of venomous monsters closes in completely around them. Striking fatally, two scaly beasts open their sharp jaws wide, aiming directly at the cornered duo. With absurd reflexes, Xiaoqing extends his arms and grabs the two giant snakes in mid-air with his bare hands before they can hit his allies. Smiling with relief, the girl celebrates her senior's quick intervention, who appears imposingly to save them from the surprise attack. Analyzing the slimy texture dripping from his hands, the main character furrows his brow, realizing that the monsters are actually molded venomous parasites. Slithering swiftly across the stones, the serpents multiply, accompanied by a macabre and crazed laughter echoing throughout the courtyard. Hidden in the mist, the sorcerer scoffs, calling the group fools and revealing that within his treacherous array, the parasites are immortal and multiply infinitely the more they are attacked. Holding his crude weapon firmly, the green-clothed young man deduces that the best way to solve the problem is to simply nip it in the bud and take down the creator of that magic. Sporting a devilish and arrogant smile, the tattooed assassin challenges the young man to try to reach him, guaranteeing that the attack will be completely useless. Ignoring the cheap provocation, the main character leaps with all his might towards the enemy, cutting through the venomous mist with his raised bamboo pole. In a devastating blow, he slices through the barbarian's body only to discover he hit a substitute snake, while the villain mutters that the charge was a cowardly act. Taking advantage of the distraction, Wenyuan celebrates the opening and quickly moves away, claiming that with no one in his way, he can finally go to the upper pavilion to claim his reward. Running desperately with his eyes wide with terror, one of the subordinates tries to flee upon hearing a massive crash behind him. From the impact of an unknown and violent force, the extra is thrown through the air, screaming in pain amidst the magical flash. Tearing through space with a golden teleportation magic, a mysterious boot steps firmly onto the battlefield. Emerging imposingly from the energy circle, the officer from the supervisory department points his sword and decrees that the southern criminal has nowhere left to run. Executing a lethal spin with his glowing blade, the newcomer clears the toxic smoke while Wenyuan indignantly questions how the council's hunting dogs managed to return so quickly. Without losing his arrogant pose, the barbarian scornfully questions if the officer really thinks he has what it takes to capture him alone. Completely surrounded by the giant parasites, the man from the agency maintains his firm combat stance and tells the villain to try his luck in his next life. Controlling the snakes calmly, the assassin guarantees he is in no hurry to capture him, revealing that his only objective there was to serve as a distraction. Suddenly, the sorcerer's eyes widen, bathed in a cold sweat, as he realizes with pure terror that the young mortal human is positioned exactly beside him. In an explosion of pure brutality and fury, Xiaoqing lands a crushing, upward punch directly in the barbarian's face, completely deforming the enemy's expression in a sea of blood and shock. With a merciless expression, the second senior hits the barbarian, aggressively demanding that he finish his sentence if he has the courage. From the overwhelming force of the attack, the enemy's body is thrown violently face first onto the lit ground. Right after, the officer from the supervisory council approaches the fallen man, applying the magic handcuffs to arrest him once and for all. Displaying a friendly smile, the newcomer praises the green, clothed young man, stating that he is as formidable as ever. Holding up a small vial, he thanks him for the mixture received, confessing that the opponent's venomous array was a real nightmare. Holding her dog, the newbie is completely mesmerized by the imposing presence of the uniformed men, pointing specifically to the handsome officer who just arrived. Explaining the situation gently, the man reveals that it's the 7th senior's parasite repellent, and that he made sure to ask for some before leaving on the mission. Quite confused by their intimacy, the brown-haired girl asks the senior about that person's identity. Assuming a formal posture, the officer introduces himself as Du Yushu, the 8th senior brother of Kafeng Valley and a current member of the 5th agency, focused on demon hunting. Upon hearing about the department, the newbie's eyes widen in surprise, immediately remembering that the 6th senior, Bai Lai, also works in the same place. Just from hearing that name, the 8th brother starts to uncontrollably vomit a rainbow, while the girl panics, not understanding what happened. With a tired look, the main character explains that his colleague was so targeted by the 6th brother's schemes that the mere mention of his name already upsets the poor guy's stomach. Wiping his mouth after the outburst, Du Yushu regrets not having arrived earlier to have breakfast together, praising the young man for always being on the side of justice. Not understanding anything, the dark-haired young man asks what he meant by that. All smiles, the officer mistakenly deduces that the senior took a beating on purpose to gain the pavilion's trust and coordinate the barbarian's capture in a masterstroke. Sweating and with his hands raised, the main character warns that his colleague is overthinking things, as he only wanted the dragon's claw flower. Changing the subject, the green, clothed young man questions the reason for the 8th brother's sudden arrival, since their conversation hadn't finished. Holding the small potion, Du Yushu explains that he was tracking an important suspect named Sang Qiao, who ended up getting involved in the Wanju Pavilion incident. To elaborate, he says he learned of the need for the plant and planned to ask for one on the way, but soon discovered that the fields had been burned. Bathed in a comical sweat, the officer confesses that the target used false clues to frame the young hare, but they realized the mistake and ended up running into the senior by pure fate. Grabbing his colleague by the collar desperately, Xiaoqing begs him to use his authority to search for another flower, while the 8th brother refuses to abuse his official power. Suddenly, a shout calling for Missa Du interrupts their discussion in the middle of the courtyard. Carrying a wooden dummy dressed in the firstborn's clothes, the guards report in fear that the family leader turned into that out of nowhere. Echoing through the room, Wenwen's mocking voice calls everyone fools, questioning if the foreigner really thought he had seen through all of his puppetry art. Outraged by the provocation, the main character storms off, crushing the poor dog's face in the process. Riding on the pet's back, he states with determination that even without the flower, he still has his grand plan for qi condensation. In a small thought bubble, the family leader displays a wicked smile after perfectly understanding the situation. Striking an extremely confident pose, the 2nd senior declares that his absurd strength comes solely from the loving support of the readers with their monthly passes, capable of purifying his meridians. In a comical and shrunken view, he begs on his knees for the passes to become invincible. While the newbie and the dog watch the pathetic scene from afar, far away, the villain Wenwen walks elegantly, preparing the activation of a luminous magic array on the hall floor. With a focused and ambitious look, the firstborn decrees that the position of master of the pavilion will finally be his. Bathed in the light of the magic formation, he positions himself in the center of the circle, waiting for the exact moment. Through the air, a small drop of blood falls perfectly onto the glowing core of the runic seal. Smashing through the entrance door, the main character appears, riding his canine pet, breaking the silent atmosphere of the place. Laughing hysterically, the villain warns that the foreigner has arrived too late, as the array has already been activated, and he will soon claim the family's supreme inheritance. Annoyed by the nobleman's arrogance, Xiaoqing tells the dog to attack quickly, deducing that the old master destroyed the flowers for fear of being used as a sacrifice in the activation of that ritual. Crossing his arms, he concludes with absolute certainty that the man hid a secret supply of blood to be able to open the seal even without the plants. With a dark smile, Wenyuan confirms the theory, praising the southern barbarian's usefulness for helping him decipher the ancient runes that required blood to open the illusion realm. Exuding a powerful energy, the family leader prepares himself as the magical winds swirl violently around him. Behind him, a gigantic, glowing dimensional portal with the yin and yang symbol opens, tearing through space. Completely ecstatic with his success, the villain raises his arms, celebrating that all the ancestors' inheritance will be his alone. Completely unexpectedly, he gets a big scare upon feeling firm hands grabbing his body from behind. Being thrown violently to the ground, the nobleman struggles angrily while the foreigner says that good things were made to be shared between them. Casting a deadly and icy look over his shoulder, the dark-haired young man stares at the fallen traitor. In a fluid and brutal motion, the second senior lands an upward kick to the opponent's chin, telling him to repeat the insults. From the perfect and sharp impact of the boot's sole, the leader's body is thrown with extreme force upwards. Unable to defend himself, Wenwen flies uncontrollably straight into the glowing portal, disappearing into the magical darkness. Casually dusting off his hands, the young man assesses the glowing passage and notes that the path seems quite safe to enter. In an excited leap towards the swirling energy, the main character dives into the portal, wishing himself good luck on the new journey. Arriving running right behind, the newbie and the eighth brother shout the senior's name as they see the young man disappearing through the dimensional hole. With his hand extended in vain, the officer desperately warns that it's the dangerous illusion realm of moon-gazing, but it's already too late. Consumed by frustration, Du Yushu punches the wooden wall, taking the blame for arriving late and thinking his colleague risked his own life to heroically pursue the villain. Sweating, the canine pet questions the supposed heroic attitude of its master, while the girl asks the officer to guard the perimeter in respect for the senior's great ambition. Now inside the illusionary realm, a breathtaking landscape of crystal, clear waters and ancient ruins rests under the intense glow of the giant moon. Flying through the air uncontrollably, the family leader curses the situation, vowing to make the foreigner pay dearly as soon as he can get out. Appearing like a ghost right behind him, the second senior startles the nobleman, ironically questioning what exactly he plans to do. Aggressively immobilizing the opponent on the ground, Xiaoqing snaps that he wouldn't waste the trip for nothing, since the flowers are gone and his Q condensation plan was ruined. With a domineering posture, he explains that he was just waiting for the villain to open the treasure door to steal the inheritance and find another cultivation method. Furious with the young man's audacity, Wenyuan invokes beams of blue energy in his hands, shouting that someone like him would never get his hands on the Song family's treasure. Sitting in the air, enveloped by the cutting magic, the firstborn unleashes his Silver Moon Slash attack, launching luminous blades at the foreigner. Moving his arm with absurd tranquility, the main character deflects the magic attack, shattering the energy blades in the air. Observing the enemy's technique, the young man comments that the nobleman really has many crook tricks cultivated through the wrong path. Advancing at a terrifying speed with a clenched fist, he declares that he is fed up with those villainous routines and glitches. With a devastating punch, the second senior sends the firstborn's body violently crashing against the large crystalline structures of the scenery. From the colossal force of the impact, the villain stains the ice wall with his own blood, sliding down completely defeated. Looking at the damage caused, the foreigner curses the situation, realizing that something is still not right in that place. Emerging from the glowing blue energy, an ethereal and imposing figure appears, gravely questioning who dares to disturb its peace. In all its spectral glory, the gigantic projection of the Song family's ancestor rises, illuminating the illusionary realm. In a fourth wall-breaking moment, the narrator Xiaoqing comically tells that he stumbled into a magical realm and obtained an invincible sacred relic called Monthly Pass. Exuding a powerful aura back in the realm's reality, he states that activating this pass envelopes him in immense spiritual energy, and he instantly elevates his fighter status. In contrast, the villain Wenyuan appears in a comical form, banging his own head against the crystal while begging for passes, so as not to lose the fight so shamefully.